Chapter 1972. Ji Tianqing seemed to have guessed something when he saw the broken bones on the throne. He crossed the hall in a flash and landed in front of the majestic throne. As he got closer, the cold air from the broken bones became even more bone-chilling, making him feel as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. He did not know how long the broken bones had been on the throne. A few hundred years? Or more than 1,000 years? Even after such a long time, the broken bones still shone like new crystal-clear ice. Even the cracks and fractures on the broken bones were still clear as if they had just appeared yesterday. Moreover, one of the more complete bones had 9 lightning runes clearly visible. That was the sign of the 9 heavenly tribulations. There was no doubt that this was the corpse of a martial sage. Only the corpse of a martial sage could be preserved for more than 1,000 years without rotting. Ji Tianqing observed for a while and confirmed the identity of this corpse. It was the Yin sage of the Yin Yang sages, Yin Qi. Strange. Yin Qi, a rank 9 martial sage, had actually died here with her body smashed into pieces? According to the legends, the Yin Yang sages were virtuous and unworldly experts. Why are there 100,000 corpses in this hall? If the deaths of the 100,000 corpses are related to the Yin Yang sages, then how are they different from the demon race? Ji Tianqing frowned as he pondered with a grave expression. The doubt in his heart grew even stronger. At this moment, the burial of heaven reminded him. The ball of white light in the broken bones may be the spiritual consciousness of the common life. If it is well preserved, you will benefit greatly. Ji Tianqing reached out his hand to push aside the ice crystal fragments and picked up the white light. This ball of white light was a walnut-sized ball of light. It was grayish-white and had no impurities. Although this ball of light was small, it contained a destructive power and was filled with a dangerous aura. Ji Tianqing knew that even the spiritual consciousness of a martial sage could not be compared to this ball of light. The difference in power was at least 10 times. He carefully released his spiritual consciousness and wrapped it around the ball of light, probing it bit by bit. After a while, his expression changed and he retracted his spiritual consciousness. He nodded and said in a complicated tone, "You guessed right. This is the crystallization of the common life spiritual consciousness. There are at least 100,000 spiritual consciousnesses and beliefs in this crystallization. The power is very chaotic. However, after thousands of years of accumulation, those chaotic and violent divine senses had long since stabilized. As long as I cultivate in seclusion, I can use the pure Yang Tian Heart Sutra to purify the common life spiritual consciousness. After I refine it, my strength will definitely advance by leaps and bounds, and rise by a few levels." Although the content of Ji Tianqing's speech was very exciting, it was still very exciting. However, his tone was very calm, and there were some complicated emotions in it. Buried Heaven said in a low voice, "This is a great opportunity. It can save you years of cultivation. Why wouldn't you be happy?" The 2 Yin Yang saints had actually raised 100,000 human and demon warriors in this mystic realm. They built statues for the common people to worship and collect the power of faith from the common people. Finally, they took the people's spiritual consciousness and used the common life God sealing technique to crystallize their spiritual consciousness. They want to use the spiritual consciousness to break through to the godly state. What was the difference between their actions and those of the evil Tao? Even in the upper realm, such actions are despised by the gods. Yes, I guessed this possibility when I was in the square. The Yin Yang saints couldn't break through to the godly state. It's very likely that they used the common life God sealing technique to break through to the godly state. But don't forget, the common life God sealing technique is a divine art, not a demonic secret art. The gods use this technique to absorb the spiritual consciousness of the people. It's also a shortcut to increase their strength and is widely recognized by the upper realm. It's just that you're arrogant and don't care about this technique. You think it's evil." Before it could finish, Ji Tianqing interrupted it. "No. Even if the Yin Yang saints cultivated the common life God sealing technique, they only needed to raise hundreds of thousands of people and continuously absorb the spiritual consciousness. Why would they kill hundreds of thousands of people and deprive them of their souls and spiritual consciousness? Even the gods of the upper realm wouldn't do such an inhumane thing like killing the goose that lays the golden egg, right?" Burial Heaven thought for a moment and said, "The common life God sealing technique is an upper realm divine art. It shouldn't appear in this world. The Yin-Yang saints were able to obtain this technique mostly because of this Jiutian 10 Absolutes Tower. I'm guessing that there's a problem with the common life god sealing technique that they obtained. Or, there's a problem with their cultivation and they couldn't break through to the martial god realm. That's why they did such an extreme thing. Ji Tianqing nodded in agreement. That's very likely. However, there's only Yin Qi's corpse here. There's no sign of Yang Tian's remains. Let's continue looking. Maybe we'll find some clues and solve the truth. After saying that, he put away the common life god sealing technique and turned to leave the hall. An hour later, he had searched the entire palace, and sure enough, he had found something. In a few secret rooms, he found many useful items and clues. There were many elixirs, cultivation methods and jade slips, as well as materials for weapon refinement and talisman drawing. Unfortunately, there were only a few saint-level elixirs and no saint-level magic treasures. The rest of the cultivation methods and materials were all low-level. Ji Tianqing didn't care about them at all. In addition, there were some tattered books that recorded the Yin-Yang saints' handwritten notes and experiences. This was so important that it attracted Ji Tianqing's attention. He finished reading the few tattered books and understood what had happened. He had a general understanding of the Yin-Yang saints' experience. Burial Heaven saw him frowning and pondering. He asked, why are the Yin-Yang saints so poor? Why are there only these low-level resources in the palace they live in? Ji Tianqing explained calmly. It said that the Yin-Yang saints had reached the peak of their cultivation and lived in seclusion, seeking the possibility of breaking through to the immortal realm. However, who would have thought that their seclusion was actually an accident? Burial Heaven was startled. He asked in a confused tone, what do you mean? Do you already know what happened? Ji Tianqing nodded and explained, over 1,800 years ago, the Yin-Yang saints had reached the 9th layer martial sacred realm. They had been traveling around the world, searching for the opportunity to break through to the martial god realm. They had never thought of living in seclusion. They visited martial god Taihao and received some enlightenment. They even visited martial god Tianjue, but were rejected. Later, they thought of the godly ruins and decided to investigate the mysterious godly ruins. If they could meet the legendary old man of the godly ruins, they might be able to find the opportunity to break through to the martial god realm. However, they ended up somewhere close to the fallen blood lake by accident. They had accidentally stumbled into an alternate space, which was this small world, the so-called Yin-Yang mystical realm. After entering, they could no longer leave. Chapter 1973. There's no exit? Burial of Heaven was stunned for a moment before realization dawned on him. I see. No wonder the Yin-Yang saints never appeared again after they disappeared. Then wouldn't we be trapped here and unable to leave? Ji Tianqing nodded and said, from the looks of it, that's indeed the case. However, there's no hurry. Let's figure out the situation first. I have a feeling that the clues to leave this small world should be in the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Tower. Buried Heaven expressed his agreement and continued to ask, by the way, what happened after the Yin-Yang saints entered this world? What about the 100,000 human clan and demon clan warriors? What was going on? Where did they come from? Ji Tianqing continued to explain, the Yin-Yang saints accidentally entered this place and accidentally discovered that it was a holy land for cultivation, a paradise. There were many natural treasures and countless demon beasts in the secret realm. In fact, they even encountered many human and demon race ancient martial art practitioners and clashed with them. The ancestors of those human and demon martial artists entered this secret realm 3,000 years ago and were trapped here, unable to leave. Therefore, the ancestors of the human and demon martial artists could only survive in this secret realm. They entered the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Tower and built many houses and buildings on the first level of the pagoda. While reproducing and cultivating, they continued to explore the pagoda and this secret realm, looking for a chance to leave. However, more than 1,000 years had passed. They still couldn't find the exit, nor could they find any clues to leave. In fact, they were trapped on the first level of the pagoda and couldn't even enter the second level. The number of humans and demons also multiplied from the initial few dozen to more than 60,000. Burial of Heaven commented upon hearing this. In more than 1,000 years, they multiplied from a few dozen to more than 60,000? The reproduction ability of the human clan and the demon clan is truly terrifying. Ji Tianqing responded blandly, among all the races in this universe, The human race and the monster race can be ranked in the top 10 in terms of reproduction. The top 3 races only need 1 male and 1 female to produce an army of tens of millions within 1,000 years. Burial of Heaven suddenly thought of something and said in a strange tone, "Are you talking about the gold-devouring great world? The male and female gold-devouring ant people produced billions of offspring in 10,000 years and occupied the entire world. It's truly terrifying." We've gone off topic. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and continued, "After 1,000 years, the humans and demons here can already marry and coexist peacefully. After experiencing too many failures, they gave up the idea of leaving and decided to live well in this secret realm. However, the Yin-Yang saints broke in here 1,800 years ago. When they saw the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Tower, they were certain that this pagoda was mysterious and extraordinary. Upon entering the first level of the pagoda, they discovered tens of thousands of humans and demons. Originally, the Yin-Yang saints wanted to find out more information about this secret realm and the pagoda from the people. However, the people of the 2 races were hostile to them. They thought they were intruders and wanted to capture them and execute them. Burial of Heaven sneered and said, "The result is self-evident." "Of course." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "The strength of the people of the 2 races is relatively ordinary. The strongest is only in the primordial spirit realm. To the saints of Yin and Yang, the 60,000 civilians were as weak as ants. Therefore, after a great battle, thousands of people from the 2 clans were slaughtered. The strongest of the 2 races all died by the swords of the Yin-Yang saints. The Yin-Yang saints used their invincible strength to intimidate the people of the 2 races and became the overlords of this place. Then, the Yin-Yang saints established order and rules for the people of the 2 races and firmly ruled this place. The people of the 2 races were not oppressed or enslaved by the Yin-Yang saints. They lived as usual. They quickly got used to it and gradually accepted the Yin-Yang saints' rule. After all, the Yin-Yang saints only wanted to find a chance to break through to the martial god realm. They were busy cultivating in seclusion or exploring the pagoda. 150 years later, after hundreds of failures, they finally broke the seal and opened the passage to the 2nd level. Burial of Heaven became interested when he heard this. However, Ji Tianqing stopped there and didn't say anything else. Burial of Heaven was a little anxious. He quickly asked, "What happened after that?" "The Yin-Yang saints entered the 2nd level of the pagoda? What did the 2nd level look like? What treasures were hidden there?" Ji Tianqing spread his hands and said calmly, "In the book I found, that's all there was to it. As for whether they entered the 2nd level or found anything, who knows?" Burial of Heaven said confidently, "I'm sure that the Yin-Yang saints entered the 2nd level of the pagoda. Otherwise, where did they get the life god sealing technique?" "Yes, I think so too." Ji Tianqing nodded in agreement. He held Burial of Heaven's sword and walked toward the square. "We've already searched the 1st level of the pagoda. There are no more useful clues here. Let's go to the 2nd level." When he finished speaking, he had already arrived at the center of the square and landed in front of the Yin-Yang saint statue. He waved his hand and sent a golden light into the pedestal under the statue's feet. Instantly, the pedestal of the statue lit up with a hazy golden light. Countless seal scripts and formation patterns flickered. After a few breaths, a blazing white light pillar appeared in the hazy golden light and shot up into the sky. The light pillar was 100 feet tall and connected to the dark dome above. Ji Tianqing raised his head to look at the dome and saw that there were densely packed silver light spots on the pitch-black dome. It was like a resplendent starry sky. A smile flashed in his eyes. He stepped into the white light. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing's figure disappeared with a flash of light. The blazing white light pillar also dissipated immediately. The golden light at the pedestal of the statue quickly retracted and returned to its original appearance, as if nothing had happened. In the next moment, Ji Tianqing felt his vision blur and he arrived in another space. It was pitch black all around. There was no light. The ground under his feet was flat and made of black stone slabs. It was hard and cold. In the surrounding darkness, there were many hazy black figures standing there silently. Ji Tianqing released his divine sense and spread it in all directions. He immediately saw it clearly. The 2nd level of the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes Pagoda was still an empty square. However, there was a tall altar in the middle of the huge square. The altar was as black as ink. It was 600 feet tall and took up 1,000 feet of space. From the ground to the top of the altar, there were a total of 49 steps. At the top of the altar was a platform with a radius of 100 feet. A statue was erected on the platform. It was a ferocious-looking demon expert with 3 heads and 6 arms. The square around the altar was densely packed with statues. There were more than 1,000 of them. Chapter 1974. Ji Tianxing was standing under the altar, among the many statues. He had observed carefully and found that the thousands of demon statues were very old. The carving technique was also very ancient. It did not look lively enough, it was also a little simple and blurry. He could only see the general outline and appearance of the statues. They were not detailed enough. The surface of the stone statues was covered with etchings of time. It was already very rough and blurry. Even a slight breeze would cause fine stone powder to fall from the surface of the stone statues. It's at least 10,000 years old. Ji Tianxing came to a conclusion. He walked through the many statues and climbed up the steps to the altar. At the top of the altar, he observed the demon god statue at close range. Even though the statue was very old and its face was blurred, it was still very old. Ji Tianxing identified the statue's physical characteristics and immediately guessed the answer. If I remember correctly, this Fey god statue should be the legendary 6-armed Vajra war god. Burial of Heaven continued. I guessed so too. The billions of demons in the upper realm recognized the 7 ancestors of the demon race and the 42 primitive demon gods. The 6-armed golden war god is one of the 42 primitive demon gods. Its status is comparable to the divine king. However, these are all myths and legends of the demon race. No one has seen it with their own eyes. Even the statues of the 6-armed golden war god can be seen everywhere in the demon race's ancestral halls and altars. That is also the demon race's fantasy. Does the 6-armed golden war god exist? What does his real body look like? No one knows the answer. Ji Tianxing nodded and said in a calm tone, back then, we had a lot of dealings with the demon race, so we have a good understanding of the demon race. Whether or not the 6-armed golden war god exists, billions of demons worship him as a primitive demon god and have always worshipped him with incense. With the power of faith of billions of demons, the 6-armed golden war god will never fall. This is the trick of the common people's god-sealing technique. Therefore, I guess that the Yin-Yang saints came here to obtain the common people's god-sealing technique. Burial of Heaven was silent for a moment, then said doubtfully, I've observed it. There are no Yao characters on the altar or the Yao god statue. There are only some ancient symbols. How can they record the god-sealing technique? Ji Tianxing said with certainty, the 6 arms of the 6-armed Vajra war god are respectively holding the giant star sword, the soul-chasing chain, the 8 treasures compass, the scarlet cloud banner, the war sky hammer, and the book of punishment. These 5 divine artifacts and Xingdian represented its supreme power and dominance. However, the statue in front of us only has 5 hands holding the 5 divine artifacts. The 6th hand is empty. Burial of Heaven immediately understood what he meant. You're saying that there should be another codex in the 6th palm, but it was taken away by someone? Correct. Ji Tianxing nodded. The divine weapons in those 5 hands are only stone sculptures. Of course the Yin-Yang saints wouldn't take them. If it's a real divine artifact, they definitely won't let it go. Burial of Heaven asked doubtfully, but you just said that the 6th palm should be holding the Yao god Xingdian. Ji Tianxing revealed a playful smile. This is just a statue. How can it hold the real Xingdian? It looks like a codex, but in reality, it's most likely the life god sealing technique. Burial of Heaven agreed. That makes sense. It seems that the Yao god statue, the altar, and the thousands of Yao statues were built to display the life god sealing technique. Also, who knew who refined this 9 heavens 10 absolutes pagoda? What's the purpose of it? Ji Tianxing smiled and said, continue exploring. It shouldn't be difficult to find the answer. Thus, he left the altar with Burial of Heaven's sword and explored the situation around the plaza. 4 hours later, he had explored the entire 2nd floor of the pagoda. In the darkness around the plaza, there was an endless wasteland. The ground was covered with gravel and barren soil. Other than that, there was nothing else. Not to mention buildings, there wasn't even a stone tablet or stone table. Ji Tianxing could only return to the plaza and continue observing the altar and the Yao god statue. Other than this altar and these statues, there's nothing else on the 2nd floor. The Yin-Yang saints must have been here, but they didn't leave any traces or clues. It seems that if I want to reach the 3rd floor of the pagoda, I'll have to start from this altar. Ji Tianqing muttered softly as he observed the altar with shining eyes. He used the 10,000 divine thoughts eyes. His eyes turned golden, and the scene in front of him immediately changed. He looked through the black rock and saw the interior of the altar. There was a ball of blazing white light floating in the darkness. That was the entrance to the 3rd floor. However, he needed to find a way to activate the formation to open the entrance. Thus, he looked up at the Yao God statue. Inside the grayish-brown statue, there were also strands of 5-colored brilliance flowing quietly. This was especially true for the 3 heads and 6 arms, which contained even greater mysteries. Ji Tianqing stared at the 5-colored veins and carefully observed the structure of the formation. He focused on analyzing it. Time passed silently. Soon, 2 hours had passed. Ji Tianqing suddenly understood something and revealed a look of realization. I see. I always thought that this pagoda was a divine artifact, and the formation in this altar must be an ancient divine formation. I didn't expect the Yin-Yang saints to have already replaced the formation with the sacred formation that they controlled. After seeing the mystery of the formation, he began to crack the formation. He formed hand seals with both hands and shot out thousands of 5-colored lines into the Yao God statue. Immediately, the Yao God statue was covered in a layer of dazzling light and emitted a sacred and majestic aura. Ji Tianqing cast the spell over 3,000 times in a row and spent 2 hours before he finally cracked the formation. Swoosh! The entire Yao God statue lit up with golden light, becoming sacred and dazzling. Immediately after, a blazing white light lit up inside the altar, forming a pillar of light that shot into the sky. This pillar of light was hundreds of feet tall and connected to the dome above. He didn't know where it led to. Ji Tianqing didn't hesitate anymore. Holding the sword of burial of heaven, he stepped into the pillar of light and immediately disappeared. Swoosh! The white light flickered and soon disappeared. The light on the altar faded, and it became cold and silent again. The surroundings also returned to darkness. In the next moment, Ji Tianqing entered the 3rd floor of the pagoda. At the same time, the situation on the mountain peak outside the Yin-Yang realm changed again. The mountain peak within 100 miles was still covered by the Broken Sky Alliance's defensive formation. Although more than half of the elite powerhouses under Qin Haishan's command had been severely injured by Ji Tianqing, however, after 2 days of recuperation, their injuries had stabilized and they had regained some of their combat strength. The Broken Sky Alliance's forces were still strong, and they were still the dominant force. There were now 36 forces around the mountain peak, and there were more than 300 people. However, the situation still didn't change. The various forces could only watch from outside the formation and didn't dare to fight against the Broken Sky Alliance. The sun had just risen. Chapter 1975. Whoosh! After a few breaths, the golden light arrived at the peak of the mountain. The golden light landed outside the formation and quickly faded away. A thin and tall figure immediately appeared. It was a middle-aged man who was 7 feet tall and had skin as pale as paper. He was wearing a gray robe with a ponytail and a wisp of beard on his chin. His face was thin and his eyes were sinister and sharp, emitting a gloomy aura from his body. No one knew how strong he was. However, his face and aura gave people a feeling of extreme danger that kept people away. The man's sudden arrival immediately attracted the attention of the various factions. Everyone's attention was focused on the white-robed man, secretly sizing him up. Everyone was confused. Who was this man? He actually dared to swagger over and land right outside the Heaven-Shattering Alliance's formation? Was he also a martial sacred realm expert who wanted to challenge the Broken Sky Alliance? The answer was soon revealed. Inside the defensive formation, the experts of the Heaven-Shattering Alliance were overjoyed and relieved. Qin Haishan, in particular, let out a sigh of relief. He quickly flew out of the formation and bowed respectfully to welcome the white-robed man. 100 Gathering City's Chief Qin Haishan welcomes Inspector Tian Shang. The expressions of the experts around the peak of the mountain changed when they heard Qin Haishan's voice. They were filled with dread. Many smart experts retreated without batting an eyelid, fleeing into the distance. Everyone knew that the inspector of the Broken Sky Alliance was basically a martial sacred realm expert. The Heaven-Shattering Alliance was already the dominant force, and now that they had a patrol envoy, they were like a tiger that had grown wings. No one could rival them. The various factions only wanted to leave this place to avoid being noticed by the patrol envoy, and be punished as an example to others. Tian Shang looked at Qin Haishan expressionlessly and said in a deep voice, "Chief Qin, you don't have to be so formal. Let's talk inside." Qin Haishan hurriedly bowed and made a gesture to invite him in. Tian Shang stepped into the defensive formation and walked toward the entrance of the Yin Yang secret realm. When he arrived at the golden and blue door, he stared at the door and observed it quietly. Qin Haishan waited patiently at the side, not daring to interrupt. After a long time, Heavenly Slayer revealed a cold smile and said, "So it's the long-lost Heavenly Capital Icefire Formation. Looks like I've made the right decision to come here." Qin Haishan was overjoyed when he heard this. He quickly asked, "Lord Tianheng, it seems that you should be able to break this formation easily?" "Of course." Pride flashed through Tian Slayer's eyes. He said in a dignified tone, "I've heard of the Yin Yang Saints' great names 1,000 years ago. I respect you greatly. There are only 3 powerhouses that I respect the most, the twin sages of Yin Yang and Kenshin. I know all of their deeds like the back of my hand. This celestial ice and fire formation was originally the supreme technique of the celestial great saint 3,000 years ago. Later it was obtained by the Yin Yang Saints." After Heavenly Slayer finished talking, Qin Haishan hurriedly flattered and said with a smile, "Lord Heavenly Slayer is a learned celestial being, erudite and knowledgeable. This subordinate truly admires you to the extreme. I wonder if my lord can start breaking the formation now? Do you need me to clear the area and get rid of those eyesores?" Over the past few days, Qin Haishan had been suppressing a belly full of anger. He could not wait to kill all the powerhouses. However, he did not dare to act recklessly. He could only hide in the defensive formation and wait for Heavenly Slayer's arrival. Now that Heavenly Slayer was here, he wanted to use this opportunity to get rid of all the powerhouses. Heavenly Slayer waved his hand and said with a disdainful expression, "There's no need to clear the area. The Heaven-Shattering Alliance is the strongest alliance on the continent. Of course, we have to be magnanimous and not bicker with those ants. Even if we let them watch, they won't be able to steal the formation, let alone affect me. Qin Haishan, pick 8 array Dao Grandmasters to help me break the array. If nothing unexpected happens, I'll be able to break the formation within 2 days." Qin Haishan, who was full of anticipation, was stunned. He subconsciously asked 2 days? Previously, when he saw Ji Tianqing break the formation, he only took an hour to do it. In his opinion, even if Inspector Tian Slayer did it himself, he would be able to break the formation within an hour. However, he did not expect that Heavenly Slayer would need the help of 8 array masters and still need 2 days to break the formation. Wasn't he too weak? Heavenly Slayer saw Qin Haishan's strange expression and could not help but frown. He asked in a deep voice, "What? Do you have a problem?" How could Qin Haishan dare to speak his mind? He quickly shook his head and said, "No, no." Heavenly Slayer was smart. How could he not see that something was wrong? His gaze was sharp as he stared at Qin Haishan with a cold expression. He asked, "How long has the white-robed brat been in the formation?" Qin Haishan was suppressed by his aura and answered in a trembling voice, "Lord Heavenly Slayer, that brat has been in there for 2 days." Heavenly Slayer's expression turned even uglier. He asked, "How long did he take to break the Heavenly Capital Icefire Formation?" "This." Qin Haishan looked troubled and stammered, not daring to answer. "Speak." Heavenly Slayer shouted coldly as a terrifying aura erupted from his body. Qin Haishan could only bite the bullet and answer, "Lord, he only took 1 hour." "What?" Heavenly Slayer's eyes immediately widened in disbelief. He almost thought that he had misheard. He did not expect or believe this answer. However, he knew that Qin Haishan did not dare to lie. There were 50 experts from the Broken Sky Alliance present. Qin Haishan could not have lied. 2 days. 1 hour. The difference between the two was too great and the contrast was too obvious. When Tian Shang recalled his arrogant and confident words, he felt ashamed and resentful. His confidence was severely damaged. He was so depressed that he almost vomited blood. With a dark expression, he did not say another word. He turned around and started to cast a spell to break the formation. Qin Haishan was also frightened. He quickly ordered 8 elite experts to help Heavenly Slayer break the formation. For the next day and a half, Heavenly Slayer focused on breaking the formation. To wash away his shame and regain his dignity, he did his best and did not dare to relax. After a day and a half, He finally broke the heavenly capital Icefire formation. Whoosh! The golden and blue door of light slowly opened to both sides, revealing a gap. Heavenly Slayer stopped. The 8 array grandmasters also let out a long breath. They retreated to rest as if they had collapsed. Let's go! Heavenly Slayer had no intention of resting. He waved his hand and stepped into the door of light. Qin Haishan quickly followed. He led the dozen or so experts he had arranged in advance and stepped into the door of light. After 3 breaths, everyone disappeared in the white light. The golden and blue door immediately closed. The remaining 30 or so experts of the Broken Sky Alliance stayed in the formation and rested silently. The experts of the 30 or so forces discussed in secret. Many people were unwilling to give up. They were still looking for opportunities or waiting for the final result. Chapter 1976. In the Yin-Yang Mystic Realm, a group of experts was flying in the blue sky. The leader was Inspector Tian Shang. Following closely behind him were Qin Haishan and 12 other experts. After entering the Mystic Realm, they had already flown 5,000 miles and crossed thousands of mountains and rivers. Tian Shang was ashamed and angry, but he did not show it on his face. He kept a cold face and remained silent. He only wanted to find Ji Tianqing as soon as possible and fight him. Only by defeating Ji Tianqing and killing him could he wash away the shame from before. Soon, they had flown for 10,000 miles, but they had not reached the end. They did not see anyone either. There were countless flying birds and beasts in the sky and mountains. Tian Shang did not want to waste time. He ordered in a deep voice, "Qin Haishan, you and I will each take 6 people. We will move separately. If there is a situation, we will contact each other." Qin Haishan also understood that this mystic realm was vast. It was too stupid for a group to fly blindly. It was wise to move separately. Therefore, he did not hesitate to accept the order. He led the 6 experts and flew to the east. The remaining 6 experts followed Tian Shang and flew to the west. Next, the 2 groups flew in the mystic realm and searched along the way. However, they soon encountered trouble. Many powerful demonic beasts began to attack the crowd. Qin Haishan and the 6 experts under him could only fight those beasts. Both sides fought fiercely. The battle was earth-shattering, and the sun and moon dimmed. Although Qin Haishan and the others had successfully killed those beasts, they were still injured. However, the powerhouses all suffered minor injuries, and their magic power was greatly depleted. In addition, the huge commotion from the battle alerted even more beasts. They had not gone far when they were attacked by beasts again. They had to fight with all their might. After a dozen or so battles, not only did it slow down the group's speed and time, it also exhausted the experts and left them covered in wounds. After an entire day, they finally reached the edge of the small world. Fortunately, no beasts attacked again. Qin Haishan quickly stopped the group and found a secluded place to heal their injuries and adjust their breathing. On the other side, Tian Shang and the 6 experts encountered the same thing. Everyone was also attacked by demonic beasts, and they were entangled with each other along the way. They fought until the heavens collapsed and the earth cracked, and the rivers were cut off. For an entire day, the group fought continuously for more than 10 rounds before they reached the end of the small world. Even though nobody died in battle, the 6 powerhouses were covered in wounds and their spiritual energy was depleted. They appeared to be in a sorry state. This was because the 6 of them were the ones who were risking their lives to defend against the enemies in the dozen or so battles. Heavenly Slayer watched coldly from the sidelines, showing no intention of intervening. He was the honorable patrol envoy, a martial sage. They were merely a few crossing Calamity Realm demonic beasts. They were not worth his time at all. This reason was very dignified, and the 6 powerhouses didn't dare to complain at all. However, they felt sullen in their hearts, and could only brace themselves and fight fiercely against the various demonic beasts. In the end, they suffered heavy injuries and only had 60 to 70% of their strength left. Even so, Heavenly Slayer would not empathize with them. They only allowed them to rest for 2 hours before they continued on their way to explore the secret realm. The 6 powerhouses groaned inwardly, but they could only endure their injuries and continue their journey with their exhausted bodies. Half a day later, the group was exploring a vast forest. Suddenly, Qin Haishan sent a message to Heavenly Slayer to report the news. He had discovered a mysterious pagoda in the depths of the mountain range. Heavenly Slayer was overjoyed when he heard the news. He quickly brought his men over to meet up with Qin Haishan. When he saw the golden pagoda with his own eyes, his eyes shone with anticipation. Qin Haishan was also filled with excitement. After the group met up, they quickly rushed to the golden pagoda to observe it closely. Heavenly Slayer looked at the 4 words on the door, and carefully read them for a long time before he realized that they were ancient words. The words, 9 Heavens 10 Ultimates, were written. Qin Haishan took the opportunity to flatter Heavenly Slayer, praising him for being knowledgeable and knowledgeable. The 12 powerhouses also looked at him with respect and admiration. Heavenly Slayer's mood was much better, and the shameful anger in his heart gradually dissipated. He was in a good mood, and he carefully observed the array on the door. After probing, investigating and pondering, Heavenly Slayer finally found some clues after 2 hours. Excitement flashed in his eyes, and he shouted in disbelief, "I understand now. I see. I didn't guess wrongly. The ceiling array on this pagoda is the Black Tortoise Dragon Array." Qin Haishan was stunned and asked in confusion, "Lord Heavenly Slayer, what's the origin of the Black Tortoise Dragon Array? It seems to be a powerful saint array?" The 12 powerhouses were also puzzled as they looked at Heavenly Slayer. Heavenly Slayer glanced at them, and his lips curled into a cold smile. He said in a playful tone, "You haven't even heard of the Black Tortoise Dragon Array? You're really ignorant." Qin Haishan did not feel embarrassed at being looked down on. On the contrary, he said even more respectfully, "We are ignorant. Please enlighten us, Lord Heavenly Slayer." Everyone's curious attitude made Heavenly Slayer very happy. He immediately found a chance to redeem his face and regain his confidence. "Since you are sincerely seeking guidance, then I will take some time to enlighten you. More than 2,000 years ago, the Black Tortoise Dragon Array was passed down to the world. It was known as the #1 defensive array below the God Realm. This caused a huge controversy, and many array Saint Masters questioned and were dissatisfied. Heavenly Slayer explained the legend of the Black Tortoise Dragon Array in detail to everyone. Qin Haishan and the others felt their blood boil, and they all asked what happened next. "Lord Heavenly Slayer, what happened next?" More than 20 array Saint Masters could not break this array. This array is worthy of being called the #1 defensive saint array. Since this array is the #1 defensive saint array below the God Realm, does that mean we can't break it? Heavenly Slayer looked up at the sky and said proudly, "There is no absolute defense in this world. If there is, then it must be because no one has found a way to break it." This sentence, which was full of philosophy, had been passed down by the powerhouses for more than 1,500 years. "Do you know who said this?" Qin Haishan and the others thought for a moment. Some shook their heads in confusion, while others hurriedly answered, "I know. It was Kenshin who said it." Heavenly Slayer nodded and looked up at the sky with admiration. He said in a serious tone, "That's right. This saying came from the great Kenshin. The origin of this saying is because of the Black Tortoise Dragon Array. 1,500 years ago, Lord Kenshin had broken this array in front of everyone at the Pillar of Heaven's Mountain Dojo. At that time, Lord Kenshin was only a martial sage. However, he only used 12 hours to break the array. This matter shocked the world and even caused a commotion in the array Dao world. Most importantly, Lord Kenshin was broad-minded and did not hide anything. He had broken the array in front of everyone and showed them the way to break it. From then on, the Black Tortoise Dragon Array was no longer the #1 defensive saint array. The way to break it was passed down and many martial sages learned it. Chapter 1977. When Tianshang said this, his voice was filled with pride, and his body exuded strong confidence. Qin Haishan and the 12 experts were influenced by his aura, and they continuously flattered him. Tianshang enjoyed seeing everyone's reverence, and he was secretly pleased. He had regained the face he had lost at the heavenly capital Ice and Fire Array. "Qin Haishan, assist me. I'll start the array now." Tianshang waved his hand and gave the order in high spirits. Qin Haishan naturally obeyed and joined forces with the 12 experts to assist Tianshang. Unknowingly, another day passed. With everyone's help, Tianshang finally cracked the Black Tortoise Dragon Array. The door of the pagoda emitted a golden light and slowly opened. Tianshang had a look of anticipation as he stepped through the door first. Qin Haishan and the others were also excited as they quickly followed. At the entrance of the Yin Yang secret realm, under the dark night, the mountain peak was still lit up with colorful lights. There were still more than 30 elites of the Broken Sky Alliance guarding the defensive array within a 100-mile radius. They obeyed Qin Haishan's orders and did not leave the defensive array, nor did they attack the other forces. They only needed to preserve their energy and guard the defensive array. Outside the array, more than half of the experts of the various forces had left. The remaining experts of the dozen or so forces were still lurking around the mountain peak, waiting silently. Everyone understood that the white-robed Martial Saint and Inspector Tian Shang had entered the secret realm. No matter what treasures there were in the secret realm, they would be taken by the two Martial Saints. No one else had the right to touch them. These forces were unwilling to leave and were still guarding around the mountain peak, hoping for a miracle. It was now the middle of the night, and the night dew was heavy. The moon had already disappeared, and only a few stars were still shining in the dark night sky. In the past few days, the mountain peak had been peaceful, and the elites of the Broken Sky Alliance had also let down their guard. However, at this moment, a red light suddenly lit up in the night sky to the southeast. The blood-red arc of light streaked across the sky like lightning, traveling at an unbelievable speed. Whoosh! After a few breaths, the blood-red arc of light traveled 300 miles and arrived outside the defensive array. At this moment, the experts of the Heaven-Shattering Alliance finally came to their senses. Everyone stared at the outside of the formation and saw with their own eyes that the ball of bloody light dissipated, revealing a large group of figures. More than 20 black figures lined up neatly outside the formation. These figures were of different heights, but most of them were very tall and powerful. They wore long black robes and were surrounded by a layer of mysterious black fog. These people's auras were very cold, revealing a trace of blood and death. Their leader was a ferocious beast that was 10 feet tall and had a pitch-black body. Its body was tall and sturdy, its limbs were thick and powerful, and its entire body was covered in black scales that formed a layer of armor that was suffused with the cold light of death. It had a long tail behind it, like a scorpion with a hook. On its sturdy back, there was a pair of pitch-black wings. His broad wings glowed with a cold light, and there was a circle of barbs on the edges. They were filled with a dangerous aura. It stood proudly outside the formation and slowly raised its huge head. It opened its scarlet eyes and looked into the defensive formation. An extremely dangerous killing intent spread out in all directions. When the elites of the Heaven-Shattering Alliance saw the appearance of this huge black beast, they were filled with shock and fear as they exclaimed, "Heavens! What kind of monster is this? Damn it! Could it be that demonic beasts also want to enter the secret realm? No! That's not a demonic beast, it's very similar to the legendary ghost race." What? The ghost race of the North Underworld Mountain is here? Everyone, don't panic, we have the defensive formation, we don't need to fear them at all. The 30 or so experts were all shocked by the ferocious aura of the huge black beast and were in a panic. However, everyone quickly calmed down and took out their Dharma treasures and weapons as they were on high alert. Around the mountain peak, the experts hiding in the dark also saw the huge black beast and the 20 or so black-robed figures. Everyone felt the danger and the aura of death and quietly retreated far away, afraid that they would be harmed if they got too close. Because the aura of the huge black beast was too terrifying, everyone even forgot to sympathize with the Heaven-Shattering Alliance and did not even have the thought of gloating. The atmosphere became more and more oppressive. Above the defensive formation, large amounts of black clouds gathered and covered the light of the formation. The huge black beast raised its thick and sturdy arms and extended its 4 black claws as blood-red flames appeared in its palms. It suddenly waved its hands and shot out a ball of blood-red flames with a terrifying aura towards the defensive formation. Kaboom! The ball of blood-red light that was the size of a water tank hit the defensive formation and exploded with a thunderous sound. The entire formation shook violently, and even the 1,000-foot-tall mountain peak shook non-stop. The sturdy 5-colored light wall was instantly destroyed by the ball of blood-red light and a huge hole appeared. Dense cracks appeared around the hole and extended in all directions. Such a scene caused everyone to be stupefied, especially the experts of the Heaven-Shattering Alliance who were inside the formation. Their eyes were wide open in shock as if they had seen a ghost. No one would have thought that this tribulation-grade defensive formation would not be able to withstand a single attack from the huge black beast. The crowd instantly realized that the giant black beast was definitely a martial sacred realm expert. In the ghost tribe of the North Underworld Mountain, martial sages were known as demon sages. After being stunned for a moment, the experts of the Heaven-Shattering Alliance immediately cried out in shock and anger. It's the demon sage of the North Underworld Mountain. It's over. Lord Tianshang is not here. How can we block it? Everyone don't panic. If we combine our powers, we will definitely be able to block it. Quick! Send a message to the branch leader and Lord Tianshang. Inside the formation, there was a state of panic. More than 30 elite experts were filled with anxiety and fear. At the same time, the huge black beast had already stepped into the formation. Its figure flashed and turned into a black stream of air that charged towards the experts. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The black stream of air flickered as it passed through the crowd. It passed through the bodies of the elite experts one after another. Its speed was so fast that no one could see it clearly. The elite experts who were passed through by the black stream of air did not even have time to attack before their bodies stiffened and fell to the ground. There was a bloody hole in their chests that was as big as a wash basin. Only their bones were left in the bloody hole. Their internal organs were gone. Moreover, there was a bloody hole in their foreheads and the back of their heads could be seen from their foreheads. The spiritual souls in their heads were also shattered. Plop plop. Corpses fell to the ground one after another. Blood gushed out and dyed the grass red. In just 10 breaths' time, 18 elite experts had been killed instantly. They did not even have a chance to fight back. Chapter 1978. Such a strange and terrifying scene scared the surviving experts out of their wits. They originally thought that they had more people on their side. More than 30 tribulation stage experts working together were enough to deal with a martial saint expert. However, the black beast was too powerful and its methods were too strange. They could not guard against it. The remaining dozen or so experts immediately lost their fighting spirit and retreated in panic. There were even a few experts who hurriedly passed through the gap in the formation and fled in panic. However, the black airflow passed through their bodies after a few flashes. Plop, plop. In the blink of an eye, those experts became corpses and fell to the ground one after another. The black airflow stopped and turned back to its original form, the black beast that was more than 30 meters tall. It strode into the depths of the formation, its sharp black claws stepping on the ground, emitting a dull thud. As it approached, the remaining 10 experts in the formation completely lost their will to fight. They did not dare to resist anymore. They did not even have the thought of running away. They were all scared out of their wits. They hurriedly threw away their Dharma treasures and weapons and knelt on the ground to beg for mercy. Under the threat of death, dignity and integrity were not important. Moreover, the black beast had a mysterious origin and its methods were ruthless and cruel. It killed more than 20 experts in seconds without saying a word. It was too terrifying. Facing such a cold-blooded and heartless demon saint, kneeling and begging for mercy was the only way to survive. However, these 10 experts clearly did not understand the demon race. Even if they knelt on the ground and begged for mercy, it was useless. The black beast walked to the front of the crowd. A murderous intent flashed in its cold eyes. It waved its sharp claws and shot out hundreds of black light blades, enveloping the figures of the crowd. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In the blink of an eye, the hundreds of black light blades shredded the 10 experts into pieces. Even their divine souls were shattered. The ground was littered with pieces of flesh and blood, scattered on the grass, emitting a thick bloody smell. The various experts outside the formation were scared out of their wits when they saw such a cruel scene. They desperately fled into the distance. At this point, they no longer dared to have any illusions about the Yin-Yang secret realm. Previously, there was the white-robed martial saint and heavenly slayer inspector. Now, there was another demon saint. The treasures in the Yin-Yang secret realm would definitely fall into the hands of these 3 martial saints. No matter how many tribulation-passing experts there were, they were not qualified to compete for it. Fortunately, the black beast was not interested in the various experts. After killing all the elites of the Broken Heaven Alliance, it walked to the entrance of the secret realm and stared at the golden and blue doors, carefully observing them. More than 20 black-robed figures hurriedly entered the array to clean up the mess. 2 hours later, the black beast began to crack the heavenly capital Icefire array. The black-robed experts of the demon race also moved to help. The night passed quickly. By the time dawn arrived, the defensive formation on the mountain peak had already dissipated. The experts who had been lurking in the surroundings had all fled. Not many of them were left. When the first ray of light shone in the morning, the black beast had successfully broken the formation and opened the door to the secret realm. Shwa! The black beast was the first to step in, followed by the 20 or so black-robed demons. When their figures disappeared in the golden light, the golden and blue door also disappeared. The mountain peak regained its peace. There was no one else except the ground full of flesh and blood. In the Yin-Yang secret realm, on the third level of the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes Tower, Ji Tianxing was sitting cross-legged on a huge grayish-brown rock. His eyes were closed as he circulated his energy and cultivated. He put his hands together in front of his chest, and a ball of white light floated in his palms. This ball of mysterious white light was the divine thought of common life that he had obtained before. The sword of burial of heaven was beside him, stuck in the huge rock, motionless. This huge rock with a radius of 30 meters was oval-shaped and covered a huge stone tomb. Under the huge rock was a stone tomb with a radius of 100 meters, built with tens of thousands of black stones. The black stones were rough and blurry, covered with a thick layer of powder, which was formed after being eroded by time. Without a doubt, this black stone tomb was very old, at least 10,000 years old. In front of the stone tomb, there was a tombstone that was 100 meters tall. Unfortunately, the tall tombstone had already shattered into pieces and scattered on the mountain peak. The words on the shattered stones were also blurred, and Ji Tianxing could not make out what they were. Even with his vast knowledge, he could not guess what kind of divine being was buried in this mysterious ancient tomb. 3 days ago, he came to the third level of the pagoda. This space was not very large, only 10 li in radius, and was shrouded in boundless darkness. The 10 li of space was a grayish-brown wasteland, the ground covered in gravel and stone. In the middle of the cold and deathly still wasteland, there was a 1,000-meter-tall hill. The hill was barren, with only brown stones. When he came to the summit, he discovered this mysterious stone tomb. But even after pondering and studying it for half a day, he could not find any clues. He could not see the origins of this ancient tomb, nor could he find the entrance to the 4th level. There was only one thing he was sure of. The clues about this ancient tomb must have been destroyed by the Yin-Yang saints. Since this was the case, he did not waste any more time. He sat on the stone tomb and used the pure Yang Tian scheming mantra to refine the divine thought of common life and increase his strength. Now, 2 full days had passed. He had refined 60% of the divine thought of common life. The walnut-sized grayish-white light ball had also become the size of a peanut. A layer of hazy white light enveloped his body, making him exude a mysterious and powerful aura. After 2 days of cultivation, his strength had increased by more than 10 times. Especially his divine soul power, which had increased by 20 times, was stronger than the average martial sage. Logically speaking, with his strength increased by so many times, he should have reached the 6th or 7th level of the tribulation stage. But the strange thing was, the heavenly tribulation did not come. He did not even have any enlightenment about the heavenly tribulation. It was as if he could increase his strength rapidly as long as he kept absorbing energy. There was no need for him to go through the heavenly tribulation. Ji Tianxing was puzzled about this, but he could guess the general reason. It must be related to the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Pagoda. Soon, another day passed. The white light in Ji Tianxing's palm had completely disappeared. He had completely refined the divine thought of common life. His strength had increased by several times, reaching the 8th level of the tribulation stage. He slowly stopped and opened his eyes. The voice of the burial of heaven immediately sounded in his mind. How strange. Your strength increased by more than 10 times, but you did not trigger the heavenly tribulation? Ji Tianxing looked at the dark sky calmly and said in a playful tone, maybe it's the Jiutian Tenju Tower that can block the will of heaven and isolate the heavenly tribulation? The burial of heaven was even more puzzled and said in disbelief, are you kidding? Only a king-grade divine artifact can achieve such a heaven-defying effect. Chapter 1979. How can a king-grade artifact appear in a low-level martial world? Burial of Heaven still could not believe it, nor could she accept this result. Ji Tianxing smiled. No matter what, this Jiutian 10 Extremes Tower is definitely not something from this world. There must be a reason why it appeared in Shenwu continent, but we don't know what it is yet. No matter what grade it is, as long as it's a divine artifact, It's a priceless treasure in this world. Burial of Heaven agreed with his words. Ji Tianqing stopped discussing this matter and used his myriad divine eyes to carefully observe the tomb below him. The third level of the pagoda only had a wasteland and this tomb. Ji Tianqing was certain that the entrance to the fourth level was related to this tomb. It was just that he had not seen through its mysteries yet. Not long after, a ray of light flew through the dark sky and landed in front of Ji Tianqing. Whoosh! The light faded away, revealing a dark purple jade slip. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows when he saw the transmission jade slip, and his eyes flashed with anticipation. Cuckoo is actually sending me a message at this time? He muttered to himself and reached out to grab the jade slip, his consciousness entering it. Jika's voice immediately rang out in his mind. Brother Tianqing, Ji Xiaolua has brought more than 20 demon powerhouses to the entrance of the secret realm. He destroyed the Sky Shatter Alliance's formation and killed all the elites before entering the Yin-Yang secret realm. My realm is too low, so I don't have the qualifications to enter the secret realm. I was arranged to be near the Fallen Blood Lake to carry out other tasks. The demon powerhouses Ji Xiaolua brought are all tribulation stage powerhouses. There are a few blood gods among them, so you must be careful when dealing with them. Jika spoke quickly, and her tone was a little anxious. After hurriedly relaying the news, her voice disappeared. Ji Tianqing put away the transmission jade slip and frowned, his eyes turning cold. After I entered the secret realm, Qin Haishan and the 50 elites of the Heaven-Shattering Alliance stayed behind in the Grand Defensive Formation. Qin Haishan had also reached the 8th stage of the Crossing Tribulation Realm. Their forces were so powerful, yet they were all killed by Ji Xiaolua? Is this new devil saint really that powerful? Ji Tianqing didn't know what happened outside after he entered the mystic realm. Now that he had received the news from Ji Ku, he was so shocked. Of course, he was only slightly shocked. No matter how strong Ji Xiaolua was, he would not take it to heart. Ji Xiaolua has also entered the mystic realm. We will meet soon. When the time comes, I'll make sure it doesn't return. Ji Tianqing muttered to himself and continued to observe the mysterious tomb. Unknowingly, 6 hours had passed. Ji Tianqing used his God's Eye secret technique to examine the ancient tomb over and over again. Finally, he found a trace of a formation's veins in the ancient tomb's rock layer. This discovery made him excited. Using that trace as the source, he spread out to search the surroundings. Soon, he found a second formation node. Unexpectedly, this node was outside the ancient tomb, in the wasteland hundreds of feet away from him. Moreover, it was hidden underground, very well hidden. Ji Tianqing roughly guessed something and continued to search in the distance. In the next few hours, he found dozens of formation nodes one after another. The facts proved that his guess was completely correct. As expected. Although this ancient tomb is the core of the third floor of the pagoda, it is also the entrance to the next floor. However, I can't start from the ancient tomb. I have to reverse the process and start from the surrounding wasteland. I couldn't find any clues before because my train of thought was wrong and I was going in the wrong direction. Then, Ji Tianqing began to get busy. He flew and shuttled through the wasteland, casting spells to break the formation. In the dark and vast wasteland, he found tens of thousands of formation nodes and veins. Connecting these nodes and lines was the structure of the entire formation. 3 days later, Ji Tianqing used his majestic magic power to light up the entire formation. A dazzling golden formation with a radius of tens of thousands of feet appeared in the darkness. The formation enveloped the wasteland and protected the mysterious ancient tomb, emitting a mysterious and powerful energy wave. Ji Tianqing stood in the wasteland and saw with his own eyes that golden light surged out of the ancient tomb. The dazzling golden light flew into the sky and turned into a huge golden bird, circling around the ancient tomb a few times. That golden bird had a strong and vigorous body. It had 3 legs and a tail like a phoenix. It looked mysterious and powerful. Ji Tianqing looked up at the golden bird, frowned for a moment, and suddenly understood. It's the 3-legged golden crow. In the legends of the demon race, the 3-legged golden crow is the incarnation of the sun. It is eternal and has supreme power. The demon race has the 7 ancestors and 42 primitive demon gods. The 3-legged golden crow is one of the 42 demon gods. Speaking of this, he looked at the mysterious ancient tomb with a burning gaze, full of anticipation. If that's the case, this ancient tomb is related to the 3-legged golden crow. Previously, I found that there was a dark area in the ancient tomb that my divine sense could not penetrate. If I'm not wrong, that area is the core of the ancient tomb. If there are any treasures or divine skills hidden in it, it must be related to the three-legged golden crow. Ji Tianqing's figure flashed as he flew over and landed on the ancient tomb. He cast the spell again and controlled the huge formation to investigate the situation in the ancient tomb. However, something unexpected happened. He still could not see the true face of the dark area and find out what was hidden in it. However, the formation was activated, causing the ancient tomb to release a sacred golden light that enveloped his body. Swoosh! A dazzling golden light enveloped him and flew into the sky, rushing toward the dark dome. He only felt his vision blur, and then he left the dark wasteland and entered another layer of space. The next moment, he entered the fourth level of the pagoda and appeared above a blue sea. The sky was dark and gloomy, filled with a deathly silence and cold aura. All around him was a vast sea. The sea was as calm as a mirror, without any ripples or ripples. Ji Tianqing stood above the sea and frowned as he looked around, puzzled. The first level is where the yin-yang sages and the hundreds of thousands of people live. On the second level, there is the statue of the six-armed golden god of war and the secret skill. On the third level, there is a mysterious ancient tomb related to the three-legged golden crow. Based on the current situation, this Jiutian 10 Absolutes Pagoda should be a sacred weapon of the demon tribe. The fourth level was actually a vast ocean. I wonder which demon god is being worshipped in this space? Ji Tianqing muttered to himself and thought to himself, the secret skill of the six-armed golden god of war has been taken away by the yin-yang sages. The treasures and inheritance in the golden crow ancient tomb are still sealed in darkness. The yin-yang sages did not get it, and I can't get it for now. I can only try the third level when I recover to the martial sage realm. Chapter 1980. While flying, Ji Tianqing released his divine sense to cover a radius of 1,000 miles. The sea was dozens of miles deep. His divine sense could penetrate the water and clearly explore the dark seabed. Below the seemingly tranquil and silent surface of the ocean, undercurrents were surging. Shocking scenes were hidden there. The cold and dark seabed was littered with the remains of many demonic beasts. The bones of those demonic beasts were basically broken. However, Ji Tianqing could infer the original appearance of the demonic beasts through those broken bones. Most of them were sea beasts that lived in the sea and were terrifyingly huge. There were giant sharks that were thousands of feet long, sea snakes that were like giant dragons, and powerful walruses, sea apes and so on. Ji Tianqing could see that those sea beasts were not only huge in size, but also very powerful. Basically, they had all reached the tribulation stage. However, they had not experienced the heavenly tribulation, so there were no lightning patterns on their bones. But for some reason, so many tribulation stage sea beasts had died in the sea and their bones were scattered at the bottom of the sea. Ji Tianqing picked up a few bones and carefully observed them. He determined that these sea beasts had been dead for more than 1,000 years. Of course, the sea beasts' bones were everywhere at the bottom of the sea. Most of them were at the tribulation stage. There were also many sea beasts that had not reached the tribulation stage. These sea beasts' fates were even worse. Not even a few complete bones were left. They had been completely turned into scraps. Ji Tianqing flew continuously for 30,000 miles and saw the same scene along the way. While this shocked him, he could not help but guess. Could it be that there was a disaster in this sea that caused so many sea beasts to die at the same time? With a heart full of doubts, Ji Tianqing continued to fly in the sea. When he arrived at the fourth level and saw the sea, he understood. From the outside, the space inside the pagoda was only a few dozen miles or dozens of miles in radius. However, the fourth level was a completely small world. It was more special than the first 3 levels. He had long been mentally prepared. Even if this sea was 100,000 miles in radius, he would not be surprised. However, it turned out that he had still underestimated this sea. He flew continuously for an entire day, a total of 150,000 miles, before reaching the end of the sea. The end of the sea was endless darkness. There was no material existence, and it could not be crossed. He could only turn around and fly in another direction, continuing to wander in the sea. For the next 6 days, he flew non-stop, exploring the entire sea. 6 days later, he finally figured it out. This sea had a radius of at least 200,000 miles. In the process of exploring the sea, Ji Tianqing had not encountered a single living sea beast, but he had seen the bones of millions of sea beasts. The bottom of the dark and cold ocean was mostly black reefs or sand. There was not even a single strand of seaweed or coral. On the evening of the 7th day, the light on the sea was dim. Ji Tianqing was flying aimlessly in the sea. Suddenly, he saw a gigantic whirlpool at the end of the sea in front of him. He sped up and flew over. Only when he was near the vortex did he get a clear view of the vortex. This whirlpool had a radius of 100 miles, and around it were huge waves that were 100 feet high. Endless seawater poured into the whirlpool, stirring up a terrifying gale. The whirlpool was wide at the top and narrow at the bottom. The further down he went, the darker it became. The bottom was already pitch black, and he could not see anything clearly. Ji Tianqing flew around the whirlpool a few times. After observing and considering for a moment, he decided to enter the whirlpool and investigate. After all, he had explored almost the entire sea and did not find any clues. Only this whirlpool was a rather unique area in the sea. If this space also contained the demon god's inheritance, it would most likely be hidden under the whirlpool. The entrance to the 5th level of the pagoda might also be inside the whirlpool. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing stepped into the whirlpool, and his body plummeted rapidly. He was enveloped by a powerful suction force, and he was smashed into the bottom of the whirlpool like a sharp arrow. His surroundings became darker and darker, and he was quickly approaching the bottom of the whirlpool. He was about to be swallowed by the darkness. The cold water wall around him had also shrunk to a radius of 1,000 feet. At this moment, a hazy black shadow suddenly appeared in the dark and cold water wall. The black shadow was as huge as a mountain, and it was at least a few thousand feet long. Like a ghost, it passed through the sea and headed straight for Ji Tianqing. Swoosh! The next moment, the huge black shadow broke through the water wall, opened its bloody mouth, and bit down on Ji Tianqing. It was only then that Ji Tianqing saw it clearly. This huge black shadow was actually an ice-blue sea beast that looked like a fish. Its body was 1,000 feet long, and its head was round and fat. It had a wide and flat mouth, and there were several rows of sharp and hideous fangs in its mouth. There were 2 whiskers on both sides of its mouth, like dragon whiskers. There was a huge nostril above its big mouth, and cold air was constantly spewing out. On its abdomen, where there should be fins, there was a pair of wide wings. Ji Tianqing did not have time to think about what species this huge sea beast was. At this critical moment, his body lit up with a golden light, and his figure flashed and teleported 5 kilometers away, appearing outside the whirlpool. Bam! Just as his figure disappeared, the huge beast's bloody mouth closed with a bang, and a loud dull sound was heard. That terrifying bite force was enough to crush a 1,000-foot-tall mountain into dregs. Screech! The huge ice-blue beast's attack missed, and it immediately let out a low cry of disappointment. It flapped its wide wings and swung its wide tail, and it instantly traversed 5 kilometers of the sea, rushing in front of Ji Tianqing again. Swish! 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 It opened its bloody mouth, and hundreds of icy light pillars shot out like a rain of arrows. Ji Tianqing's figure was immediately drowned by the icy light pillars. However, once he calmed down, he responded calmly and unhurriedly. He was extremely calm and composed. I've been wandering in the sea for 7 days, and I've seen thousands of sea beast corpses. Now, I've finally met a living one. He muttered to himself, and his right hand waved the sword of burial of heaven, and he slashed out 49 golden sword lights. The golden sword lights split the seawater and slashed at the icy light pillars. Bam! 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 The sword light and the light pillars collided, and there was a deafening sound. The terrifying impact spread out in all directions, and the seawater within a 15-kilometer radius was dispersed. This area had turned into an empty space, like a huge bubble. The icy blue light pillars were all shattered. Ji Tianqing was unscathed, but the huge ice-blue beast was sent flying 5 kilometers away by the impact. He could see that the huge ice-blue beast's strength was only around the 7th level of the Tribulation Passing Realm. It was easy for him to deal with a sea beast of such strength. Star-shattering fist. Before the huge beast came to its senses, he took advantage of the opportunity to attack, and a silver fist light blasted out. Bam! The huge ice-blue beast was sent flying again, and it crashed into the dark bottom of the sea. Sky Dragon Palm. Ji Tianqing raised his left palm again, and a golden dragon light shadow, which hit the head of the ice-blue beast. This time, the ice blue beast was severely injured, and its consciousness was blurred. Chapter 1981. This fat fish was hit by 3 of my secret techniques, but it didn't die. It's not simple. Ji Tianxing looked at the ice blue sea beast with bright eyes and praised it with surprise. He had already seen through the clues and guessed the identity of the sea beast. Therefore, he was quite excited and had a big smile on his face. Fat fish. Burial of Heaven was stunned and said in a strange tone, "You know it's not an ordinary fish, but one of the 7 ancestors of the demon clan, the big fish of the North Sea." Ji Tianxing nodded and said with a playful smile, "There's a fish in the North Sea called the kuan. The kuan is so big that it can't be stewed in a pot. Bah, the kuan is so big that it's thousands of miles long." Burial of Heaven said faintly, "Little white dragon always liked to say this, and it led you astray." Ji Tianxing nodded again and said with a smile, "That white dragon is never serious. Back then, he made a mess in the demon clan and even threatened to get a kuan to ride. Those old guys of the demon clan were so angry that they chased him everywhere. He didn't think that the kuan is one of the 7 ancestors of the demon clan, the ancestor of the sea beast branch. How could he blaspheme?" Halfway through his words, he saw the blue kuan escape into the whirlpool as fast as lightning. "Haha, fat fish still wants to escape?" Ji Tianxing sneered and raised his left hand as fast as lightning to use the sky-capturing dragon claw. Swoosh! The dazzling golden light condensed into a giant golden dragon claw with a radius of 10,000 feet and grabbed at the blue kuan. The blue kuan was seriously injured and couldn't dodge. It was immediately wrapped by the golden dragon claw. Swoosh! Ji Tianxing clenched his left hand and the golden dragon claw grabbed the blue kuan tightly. With a thought, the golden dragon claw grabbed the blue kuan and flew back to him. The blue kuan was caught by the dragon claw and struggled anxiously and angrily. It kept making sad cries. Its voice was quite special. It possessed a powerful penetrative power that could pass through thousands of li of seawater and intimidate the souls of other creatures. Fortunately, Ji Tianxing's spirit was extremely powerful, comparable to that of a martial sage. Lan Kuan's sound wave attack was completely useless against him. Ji Tianxing looked at blue kuan with a smile. He looked at it from head to toe several times before nodding and saying, "Yes, this is the legendary kuan of the north. However, this is only a young kuan." Burial of Heaven was silent for a moment, and then thoughtfully asked, "The millions of sea beast corpses we saw before were all dead 1,000 years ago. 1,000 years ago, this little kuan might not have been born yet, right? Let me take a look first." Ji Tianxing released his divine sense and probed into the blue kuan's head, counting the number of hidden bones in its cranial cavity. Only 1 chaos bone has formed. The second one is only half grown. This little kuan has lived for about 1,500 years. Burial of Heaven hurriedly asked, "This little kuan might know the cause of the millions of sea beasts' deaths, or it might have experienced that disaster." "It should be." Ji Tianxing nodded. Burial of Heaven asked again, "You have dealt with many demons in the past. You should be able to understand their language and communicate with this little kuan, right?" Ji Tianxing smiled and explained, "Although the kuan of the north is a demon, it has a unique language, which is different from ordinary demons. Fortunately, White Dragon was very interested in the kuan in the past and studied the legends and heritage of the kuan race. I accidentally read White Dragon's notes, so I have a certain understanding of the kuan race's language and legends. Moreover, this little kuan has reached the tribulation stage, so I can communicate with its spirit." Only then did buried Heaven feel relieved. He urged, "Then quickly ask it what exactly is going on here." Ji Tianxing smiled and said, "Don't worry, this little kuan is very angry now. It is very hostile and vigilant against me, so it is not convenient to ask." Then, he put away the Burial of Heaven sword and controlled the golden dragon claw with his left hand, holding the blue kuan tightly. He shot out rays of green light from his right hand and injected them into the blue kuan's body to heal its injuries. The blue kuan, who was struggling violently and wailing, suddenly quieted down. It stared at Ji Tianxing with a pair of big black eyes, full of doubts. Obviously, it did not expect that this fiendish fellow would actually heal its injuries. It thought that it was going to die today. An hour later, the blue kuan's injuries were mostly healed, and its emotions were stabilized. Ji Tianxing stopped casting the spell and looked at the blue kuan with a gentle expression. He used his spirit to make strange sounds and said to the blue Kuan, "Little guy, you don't have to be afraid. I won't kill you. I unintentionally entered this place and was trapped here, unable to leave. So, I have some questions to ask you, and I hope you can answer truthfully." A strange spirit fluctuation was transmitted into the blue Kuan's mind. It was stunned for a moment, obviously understanding Ji Tianxing's words. It stared at Ji Tianxing with its round eyes and carefully observed for a while. It seemed to want to see if Ji Tianxing was lying. After a while, it seemed to believe Ji Tianxing and nodded its round fat head. "Very good." Ji Tianxing smiled and cast a spell to remove the golden dragon claw. As the golden dragon claw disappeared, the blue Kuan immediately regained its freedom. But it did not escape again, nor did it show any signs of attacking. Obviously, its intelligence was quite high, and it knew that it was no match for Ji Tianxing and could not escape at all. In addition, it was also curious about Ji Tianxing, this strange alien, and wanted to talk to him. After a moment of silence, it blinked its big black eyes and said to Ji Tianxing with spirit sound transmission, "You are also a human? You won't kill me, right?" Little blue Kuan seemed to have never communicated with humans before. Even if it used its spirit sound transmission to speak the language of the Kuan clan, it stuttered and was not very fluent. Ji Tianxing understood, and his expression suddenly changed. He asked in a serious tone, "Little guy, have you seen a human before? Or has a human been here before?" Little blue Kuan was stunned and stared at him for a long time before it stuttered and asked, "You won't kill me, right?" Ji Tianxing could not help but laugh. It turned out that this fat fish was most concerned about this question. I didn't expect such a silly fat fish to be so guarded and still be troubled by this question. Has it been hurt or deceived before? Is that why it is so guarded against humans? Thinking of this, he quickly nodded and said in a serious tone, "Little guy, don't worry. As long as you don't have any evil intentions, I will not hurt you." With his assurance, little blue Kuan was relieved, and its expression was obviously much more relaxed. It lowered its guard, nodded its huge head, and said intermittently, "I've seen it before when I was very young. A human, wearing white like you. He was very scary. Massacred, destroyed the spirit sea. Many elders died. I was very scared. Ran very far. Hid for a long time. And in the end I was the only one left, still alive." After hearing little blue Kuan's words, Ji Tianxing's eyes suddenly lit up. Chapter 1982. Yang Tian. Ji Tianxing was sure that the man in white that little blue Kuan was talking about was definitely Yang Tian. Yin Shang Yin Qi had already died on the first level of the Divine Pagoda. Only Yang Tian was missing. No one knew if he was alive or dead. A few days ago, Ji Tianxing had guessed that Yang Tian might have reached a higher level of the Divine Pagoda. What happened later proved that his guess was right. On the second level of the Divine Pagoda, the codex held by the six-armed golden war god was taken away. On the third level of the Divine Pagoda, the ancient tomb of the three-legged golden crow was cleaned up, and the words on the broken tombstone were also erased. On the fourth level of the Divine Pagoda, Yang Tian slaughtered millions of sea beasts. Almost all the sea beasts were killed, and only little blue Kuan managed to survive until now. Ji Tianxing believed that as long as he found Yang Tian, he would be able to solve all the mysteries. He looked at little blue Kuan expectantly and quickly asked, "Little guy, why did that man in white kill the sea beasts and destroy the entire deity ocean?" Little blue Kuan shook its head and said angrily, "I don't know either, but I heard him say something about the deity realm. The last step. At that time, he was already crazy. I don't understand what he meant, but I guess it might be related to cultivation." Ji Tianxing heard the key information again and asked in disbelief, "Little guy, after the man in white killed the sea beasts, you still saw him and talked to him?" Little blue Kuan was speaking more and more fluently, and it was no longer stuttering like before. It nodded and explained, "I saw him. About 1,000 years ago, I was the only one left in the deity ocean. The massacre. More than 300 years ago. I thought that the bad guy had already left. Moreover, I was strong enough, so I wanted to go back to the eye of the sea to take a look. Who knew that the bad guy hadn't left yet, and was still cultivating in the eye of the sea?" Ji Tianxing asked with interest. "Then he found you. With your strength, you couldn't escape at all, so he caught you, right? But why didn't he kill you?" Little Blue Kuan nodded and said thoughtfully, when I was caught by him, I was also very scared. However, he didn't kill me. He even talked to me for a long time. He seemed to be repenting, saying that he was wrong, and that he had gone in the wrong direction. So he didn't hurt me. Ji Tianqing vaguely understood something and muttered to himself, as I expected, in order to break through to the martial god realm, Yang Tian did his best to climb the divine pagoda and enter layer after layer of space. More than 1,800 years ago, the Yin-Yang saints entered the divine pagoda and stayed on the first level. It was only 1,300 years ago that Yang Tian came to the fourth layer and slaughtered all the sea beasts. This meant that he had wasted 500 years in the first 3 levels. He had killed millions of beasts to find a chance to rank up to the martial god realm. However, after 300 years, he still had not broken through to the martial god realm. He was still trapped in the vortex. Only then did he repent and find his conscience. He knew that he had chosen the wrong direction. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing asked Little Blue Kuan, "Little fellow, where is the white-robed man now? Is he still in the eye of the sea? Or has he already left?" In his opinion, the 9th-level martial sage Yang Tian could live for at least 5,000 years. In this deity sea, other than Yang Tian, there was only Little Blue Kuan. Thus, Yang Tian could not have died. Either he was still in the vortex or he had already left. Little Blue Kuan thought for a while before explaining. He and I stayed in the eye of the sea for a few years. He taught me some things. After that, he let me go. He said that he wanted to calm down and make a final attempt. I left the eye of the sea and hid at the edge of the deity sea. I was afraid that he would go crazy one day and kill me. About 10 years later, suddenly, there was a huge explosion in the deity sea. The entire deity sea was boiling. It was a terrifying scene. Waves 1,000 feet high came crashing down. I was very scared. I saw that the sky near the eye of the sea was covered by golden light. It did not dissipate for half a month. Hearing this, Ji Tianqing's eyes lit up. The golden light did not dissipate for half a month? Then he must have successfully broken through to the martial god realm. Little Blue Kuan shook its head and said firmly, "No, he is dead." Ji Tianqing was shocked. He asked in disbelief, did he fail to break through to the martial god realm? Little Blue Kuan nodded and explained. More than 20 days later, the deity sea calmed down. I returned to the eye of the sea and saw his corpse. His body was smashed and his soul dissipated. He was completely dead. I found his corpse near the eye of the sea and some of his belongings. Originally, he had killed all the sea beasts in the deity sea. I hated him to the core and we had a blood feud. But he had repented and he was already dead. Everything was over. I thought about it for a long time and buried his corpse and belongings in the eye of the sea. Ji Tianqing quickly asked, "Little guy, you did a great job. Take me to see it now." Although the Yin-Yang saints were dead, as long as he found Yang Tian's corpse and belongings, he might be able to unravel the truth. The Little Blue Kuan opened its big, black eyes wide, gazing at him. It was a little bewildered. "Why should I take you there? We just met. I don't believe you. The eye of the sea is my home and it is the safest place. If you snatch my territory, won't I have to wander again? If you also go crazy or want to kill me, won't I die miserably?" Little Blue Kuan's series of questions left Ji Tianqing speechless. It was obvious that the Little Blue Kuan was not scheming at all and was very innocent. It only retained its instinctive vigilance and a strong sense of self-protection. The questions it had asked Ji Tianqing were the true thoughts in its heart. Ji Tianqing looked at it sincerely and explained in a serious tone, "Little guy, I just want to leave this place as soon as possible. I don't want to stay and cultivate, and it's impossible for me to snatch your territory. You and I are the only ones left in the deity sea. Without you, I don't know enough about the deity sea and can't enter the eye of the sea. I still need your help, so how can I kill you?" Little Blue Kuan thought seriously for a moment before nodding. "Well, what you said makes sense. I'll believe you for now." Seeing that it finally agreed, Ji Tianqing smiled and said with relief, "That's right. Between people." No, between people and Kuan, we should treat each other with sincerity." Little Blue Kuan listened and thought carefully before nodding in agreement. "Well, that makes sense." Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "Okay, you can rest assured now. Take me there." Little Blue Kuan no longer hesitated. It turned and swam toward the whirlpool not far away. It flapped its wide ice blue wings and tail and quickly entered the whirlpool like a blue stream of light. Chapter 1983. The bottom of the vortex was pitch black. However, Ji Tianqing could sense that this vortex had gathered all of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the entire divine sea. In the darkness, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth converged to form a gust of wind. He followed little blue Kuan into the darkness and quickly passed through an invisible wall before entering an alternate dimension. Whoosh! Light returned to his eyes, and he was surrounded by ice-blue seawater that was quietly rippling. Countless strands of five-colored spiritual energy floated in the seawater like strands of seaweed. Ji Tianqing looked around and discovered that this alternate dimension was completely filled with seawater and spiritual energy. This place was magnificent, just like the legendary Crystal Palace. Little Blue Kuan swam happily in front of him, and it also became a little excited. Ji Tianqing followed it and flew straight ahead. Not long after, a colorful coral reef appeared in the seawater up ahead. The coral reef with a radius of 100,000 feet was covered in colorful corals and seaweed. Those seaweed and corals were all high-grade spirit medicines that had been nourished by the spiritual energy of heaven and earth for many years. They possessed powerful effects and shone with a brilliant light. There were countless shells scattered around the coral reef, and each of them was as big as a wash basin. These shells had all become sentient beings with extremely tough defenses, and fist-sized pearls and all kinds of precious pearls were hidden in their bodies. Ji Tianqing scanned the area with his divine sense, and he could see many luminous pearls, five-colored pearls, and white pearls. Little Blue Kuan flew to the coral reef and lay down in a huge pit in the center, adopting a leisurely posture. "This is my home," it said to Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing nodded with a smile. This is indeed a treasure trove. Not only is it convenient for cultivation, but it's also very secluded and safe. He was speaking from the bottom of his heart. Little Blue Kuan was a little nervous upon hearing this, and it said carefully, "No, no, no. This is not a good place. There's nothing here, and there's no one of our kind to talk to. It's not suitable for you to live here, and you won't like it here." Ji Tianqing smiled and comforted. "Don't worry, I'm not interested in your territory. I'm a human, so I won't live in water, let alone in a pile of coral reefs. You probably don't know, but we humans can build magnificent houses and palaces, sacred and solemn pavilions. Only those are suitable for us to live in." Hearing his words, Little Blue Kuan relaxed and quickly changed the topic. "Didn't you want to see the white-robed man's tomb? I'll take you there now." After saying that, it continued to swim north, bringing Ji Tianqing through more than a dozen coral reefs and hills, arriving outside a cave. This cave was located on a small mountain at the bottom of the sea. The mountain rocks were pitch black and ice-cold, and abnormally tough. The cave was winding, but fortunately, it was only 100 feet deep. The Little Blue Kuan was too big. Naturally, it couldn't enter. It pointed at the entrance of the cave with its head and said to Ji Tianqing, "That guy's bones and belongings were thrown into the cave by me. I can't go in, so you can go in and see for yourself." Thus, it stood guard outside the cave, and Ji Tianqing entered the cave alone. When he passed through the darkness and reached the depths of the cave, he saw spots of white light on the black rocky ground. He focused his eyes and saw many broken bones scattered on the ground. These broken bones were milky white, like white jade. They were crystal clear, without any impurities. The big ones were the size of a fist, and the small ones were only the size of a date pit. Even after thousands of years, these broken bones had been soaking in the sea, and had not rotted. Without a doubt, these were the bones of a martial saint. Ji Tianqing went all the way into the depths of the cave, picking up hundreds of broken bones along the way. In the deepest part of the cave, there was a pit with a radius of 100 feet. It was shaped like a gourd. He found a large number of broken bones and miscellaneous items in this pit. There were broken armor, dim gems, treasured swords with broken tips, spirit stones, pearls, and gems, etc. In addition, there were a few pieces of a white robe and 2 bracelets made of star silver. Ji Tianqing picked up the 2 deformed and dim bracelets and examined them carefully. This was a pair of dragon and phoenix bracelets, usually worn by couples. The dragon bracelets were engraved with the words, "Hand in Hand," and Yang Tian's signature. The phoenix bracelets were engraved with the words, "Grow old with you," and also had Yin Qi's signature. Seeing these 2 bracelets, Ji Tianqing was completely sure that the bones here were Yang Tian's. He waved his hand and shot out a golden light, which wrapped around the hundreds of broken bones. As the golden light surged, the hundreds of broken bones were quickly pieced together. An 8-foot-tall skeleton was formed. The 4 limbs, the torso, and the head were all pieced together. Only some parts were missing, such as 2 fingers and toes, and a few ribs in the chest cavity. Ji Tianqing guessed that the bones were destroyed in the explosion, or the little blue Kuan missed them. But this was not a big deal. Looking at this complete skeleton and comparing it to the Yang Tian statue he had seen before, there was basically no difference. Ji Tianqing checked the armor and the white robe fragments, as well as the gems, swords, and other miscellaneous items. Unfortunately, he could not see anything from these things. No, something is still missing. There must be a clue. Ji Tianqing released his divine sense and enveloped the entire cave, searching carefully. After a while, he found a black ring from the messy pile of rubble. Without a doubt, this was Yang Tian's interspatial ring. The ring had been deformed, dim, and had lost its power. Yang Tian was long dead, and the soul imprint on the ring had naturally dissipated, becoming an ownerless item. Ji Tianqing used his divine sense to invade and easily opened the interspatial ring. Sure enough, there were many things stored in the interspatial ring, all of which were Yang Tian's relics. Ji Tianqing went through the items and found hundreds of primordial spirit and tribulation grade treasures, hundreds of thousands of spirit stones, and hundreds of bottles of pills. There were also miscellaneous cultivation resources and miscellaneous items that had been piled up into a small mountain, and it would take a long time to identify them. Ji Tianqing was not interested in the miscellaneous items, and his attention fell on a pile of jade slips. More than 10,000 jade slips had been stored together, and they were still in good condition as they glowed faintly. "I've finally found it. There are more than 10,000 jade slips here, so there should be a lot of things recorded here." Ji Tianqing revealed a gratified smile and began to flip through the jade slips. His divine sense invaded the jade slips, and he quickly read a large amount of information. This information was either recorded in the Shenwu continent's common language or in Yang Tian's and Yin Qi's voices. Ji Tianqing read the information at an extremely fast speed without any hindrance. He flipped through more than 1,000 jade slips in a row, and most of them recorded secret techniques as well as some trivial matters about the Shenwu continent. Among them, there was also information about Yang Tian and Yin Qi's life experiences. From when the two met, to when they rose to fame, to when they took revenge, to when they became husband and wife, and finally to when they traveled the world together. After an hour, Ji Tianqing finally found a clue when he saw more than 2,000 jade slips. Chapter 1984. Ji Tianqing focused on reading the jade slip. All kinds of information flowed into his mind like a tide. There were thousands of notes in the jade slip. Yang Tian's deep voice sounded in Ji Tianqing's mind. 10 days ago, Qi and I entered the secret realm by mistake. We searched the entire secret realm but couldn't find the exit. We could only wait patiently. This morning, Qi was attacked by demonic beasts in the mountains. I killed dozens of demonic beasts, but was surrounded by a group of demonic beasts and human martial artists. These aboriginals were weak. I killed hundreds of them with a snap of my fingers, shocking everyone. However, thousands of people heard the news and surrounded Qi and me. I subdued thousands of martial artists and ordered them to return to their residence. Only then did I find a golden divine tower with an extraordinary aura. It must be a divine weapon. There was another world in the tower. Tens of thousands of martial artists lived in the tower. They knew nothing about the outside world. They were hostile and swore to take revenge. Qi and I worked together to kill thousands of them, shocking the martial artists of the two races. Since we couldn't leave the secret realm, we decided to stay in the tower and explore its secrets. I have a feeling that this godly pagoda is hiding some shocking secrets. It might be able to help us achieve the martial god realm. Information after information flashed through Ji Tianqing's mind. There was no doubt that these were notes written by Yang Tian. It was full of his and Yin Qi's experiences, from when they first entered the Yin Yang secret realm, discovered the divine tower, and ruled the human and demonic beasts. Ji Tianqing felt that he was getting closer to the truth, so he continued to read the notes. As the Yin Yang sages ruled the divine tower, the time between each note became longer and longer. The short ones were a month or two, and the long ones were decades apart. Among them, the longest time span was actually over 100 years. That was about 100 years after Yang Tian ruled the two races. At that time, the situation in the tower was stable. The human and demonic beasts had multiplied to more than 70,000 people and were ruled by the Yin Yang sages. Yang Tian and Yin Qi worked together to explore the Divine Tower. It took them decades to enter the second level of the Divine Tower. On the second floor of the Divine Pagoda, the two of them saw the statue of the six-armed Vajra war god and the codex. In the codex, half of the codex and half of the divine arts were recorded in the ancient demon language. It was called the Life God Sealing Technique. The Yin-Yang saints were overjoyed to have obtained half of the divine art. Both of them saw the light at the end of the tunnel. There was hope for them to break through to the martial god realm. They cultivated in seclusion in the second level and spent 100 years to fully comprehend the first half of the divine arts. After the incident, Yang Tian wrote it down in his notebook. At that time, he was overwhelmed with emotions and lofty ambitions. As I expected, there is indeed a great opportunity in the Divine Pagoda. It allowed me to see the demon race's god and obtain half of a divine art. He had never thought that the ancient demon clan would be so powerful and possess such a profound divine art. This half of the common people's god sealing technique was just unbelievable and totally weird. My horizons have been broadened. Only now do I know that there are 3,000 great Daos in the world, and every great Dao can confer divinity. Qi and I have no hope of breaking through to the martial god realm, and we haven't had any opportunities. The heavens are so kind to let us obtain the god sealing technique. Coincidentally, there are tens of thousands of martial artists on the first floor of the Divine Pagoda who can help us gather faith. From then on, the Yin-Yang saints returned to the first floor of the Divine Pagoda and began to build statues and altars for the tens of thousands of people to worship. The two of them used the common people's god sealing technique to absorb the faith of the people. As expected, their strength improved by leaps and bounds, and they saw the hope of becoming gods. In the next 200 years, their strength continued to improve. They were as powerful as gods. However, their strength was infinitely close to the martial god realm, but they could not break through. The Yin-Yang saints gradually lost their patience. No matter how hard they thought, they could not find a solution. Therefore, they climbed the Divine Pagoda again and spent another few decades to reach the third floor of the Divine Pagoda. On the third floor, the two of them found a mysterious ancient tomb. They tried everything and went through tens of thousands of attempts and failures, but they still could not open the Golden Crow tomb, let alone obtain the treasures and inheritance in the tomb. The two of them were disheartened and could only return to the first floor of the Divine Pagoda. 100 years later, Yang Tian and Yin Qi had reached the peak, but they still could not break through to the martial god realm. They had also finished cultivating the first half of the divine technique. Without the second half, they could only deduce and guess on their own. The two of them were desperate. After 30 years of torment and hesitation, Yin Qi finally decided to take the risk. She wanted to sacrifice 100,000 people to gather the divine thoughts of the common people and forcefully break through to the martial god realm to become a god. At that time, Yang Tian strongly objected. He did not want her to risk her life, and he did not want to see her slaughter 100,000 people. However, Yin Qi was completely desperate. She stubbornly decided to fight to the death. Before the ceremony, she wrote down a note in a jade slip. I was originally a demon, but why did I have to become a god? Since I have entered this path, there is no turning back. Even if I have sinned and will be punished by heaven, I will bear it alone. It has nothing to do with Yang Tian. As a demon, I should have the highest chance of success in deducing the god-sealing technique. Even if it is risky, I should be the one to try. The final result was just as Ji Tianqing saw. Yin Qi held a grand divine technique ceremony on the first floor of the Divine Pagoda and cast a spell to take the souls and lives of 100,000 people. In the end, the divine thoughts of the common people were successfully condensed. She used the god-sealing technique to forcefully devour the divine thoughts of the common people, intending to become a god. However, she could not withstand the chaotic and violent divine thoughts of the common people and soon exploded and died. Not only was her body shattered, but even her soul collapsed and dissipated. She died on the spot. Yang Tian also did his best to help her refine the divine power of the common people. Unfortunately, the two of them failed and ended up in a miserable state. Yin Qi died, and Yang Tian was seriously injured by the explosion. He was in a coma for several years before waking up. Since then, Yang Tian was the only one left alive on the first floor of the Divine Pagoda. He was lonely and desperate. He missed his dead wife every day, and his mind was not clear. Yin Qi's death was too big a blow to him. From then on, there was only one belief left in his heart that supported him to live. That was, to break through to the God realm at all costs. Only by breaking through to the God realm could he leave this secret realm. More importantly, he had a chance to use the divine technique to resurrect his dead wife, Yin Qi. 20 years later, his injuries were mostly healed. Therefore, he took his dead wife's belongings and left the first floor of the Divine Pagoda. He entered the third floor of the Divine Pagoda and spent 100 years to solve the mystery of the Golden Crow tomb. Not only did he open the passage to the fourth floor, but he also obtained half of the sun-devouring divine technique under the tombstone. Later, there were fewer and fewer notes in the jade slips, and the time span became longer and longer. However, Ji Tianqing understood what happened after that through the short notes. Yang Tian entered the fourth floor of the Divine Sea and was attacked by countless sea beasts. However, he was a martial saint and was invincible. He easily killed hundreds of sea beasts. He tried to cultivate the sun-devouring divine technique and devoured the flesh and souls of many sea beasts. His strength increased greatly. This gave him hope of breaking through to the God realm. He was encouraged and started a massacre in the Divine Sea. Chapter 1985. An hour later, Ji Tianqing finished reading all the contents of the jade slip. He already knew the truth of the matter from beginning to end. Yang Tian had slaughtered the deity sea and devoured the power of millions of sea beasts. He went into the eye of the sea and hid in the crystal palace-like coral reef, concentrating on refining his magic power. However, he had only obtained half of the sun-devouring divine technique. During the process of cultivation, 90% of the power of millions of sea beasts had been wasted. Not only was the amount of power he could refine pitifully, but it was also very chaotic. After 300 years, his power had reached its limit, and he had also cultivated half of the divine technique to its limit. Even though he had the combat power of a martial god, he still could not break through to the martial god realm. He was completely desperate. He had been alone for too long, and he had been depressed for hundreds of years. It made him crazy and had nothing to live for. A few years before his death, little blue Kuan came to the eye of the sea. Yang Tian found this fish that had escaped the net, but he did not kill it. He did not even hurt little blue Kuan. He knew very well that he had killed millions of sea beasts in order to cultivate the sun-devouring divine technique. He was simply a bastard and stupid. Therefore, he was full of guilt and often regretted and blamed himself. After spending a few years with little blue Kuan, he finally felt relieved and became indifferent to life and death. He decided to risk his life and use the sun-devouring divine technique to break through to the immortal state. If he succeeded, everything would be fine. He would have a chance to leave the tower and resurrect his dead wife. If he failed, he would follow his dead wife and reunite with her in the netherworld. Later, he drove little blue Kuan away. Above the vortex, he burned his life's blood and magic power to break through to the immortal state with the help of the sun-devouring divine technique. There was no doubt that he also failed. He exploded and died on the spot. His body was blown to pieces, and his divine soul collapsed and dissipated. The Yin-Yang saints had died, but the world did not know. Later, little blue Kuan returned to the eye of the sea, picked up Yang Tian's remains and threw them into the cave. Everything was over. It's all this shitty tower's fault. I don't know who arranged it, but only half of the divine arts are left. Yang Tian and Yin Qi were driven mad and killed by half of the god-sealing art and half of the sun-devouring divine art. Ji Tianqing could only feel pity for the fate of the Yin-Yang saints and let out a faint sigh. After learning the truth and learning about what had happened 800 years ago, his heart felt heavy. However, the past was the past. He quickly put away his sympathetic thoughts and continued to flip through the other jade slips. It wasn't long before he pulled out 2 faint golden jade slips from the mountain of jade slips. These 2 specially made jade slips were reinforced and protected by a saint-level array formation. Even after thousands of years, it would not be destroyed. Ji Tianqing spent 2 hours to remove the sealing array formation on the jade slip. Just as he expected, the 2 jade slips contained half of the life god sealing technique and half of the sun-devouring divine technique. He put the 2 jade slips into his spatial ring and kept them safe. The voice of the burial of heaven immediately sounded in his mind. It's just 2 divine arts of the demon clan. You didn't care for them back then. Besides, you don't need the jade slips to remember the complete incantation, right? Ji Tianqing explained with a smile. People always change. I am Ji Tianqing now, not the Kenshin of the past. Besides, even if I don't care for these 2 divine arts, I can give them to someone else. The burial of heaven didn't say anything more, agreeing with his statement. At this moment, a sharp sigh came from outside the cave. The little blue Kuan was obviously anxious. It said to Ji Tianqing with special syllables, "Hey, why haven't you come out yet? You don't want to stay here, do you?" Obviously, the little blue Kuan was still on guard against this problem. Ji Tianqing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He waved his hand and sent out a few rays of golden light. He dug a hole in the ground and buried Yang Tian's bones and belongings. Then, he walked out of the cave unhurriedly and came in front of the little blue Kuan. "You little guy, why are you so guarded? Can't you trust me a little?" As he said this, he even stretched out his finger and knocked on the little blue Kuan's fat head. Even though he didn't use any strength, the little blue Kuan instinctively retreated and hid 1,000 feet away in fear. Ji Tianqing immediately laughed loudly with a mocking expression. The little blue Kuan finally reacted. It knew that he was deliberately teasing it and couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. After hesitating for a moment, it stammered, "That, you've already seen the bones of the white-clothed man. When are you going to leave?" Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and said in a playful tone, "If I can find the exit, I want to leave now. So if you want me to leave early, you have to help me find the exit." The little blue Kuan was instantly overjoyed and nodded repeatedly. "Okay, then it's a deal. I'll help you find the exit." After promising Ji Tianqing, it quickly became listless. Its eyes were a little depressed as it said, "But I've lived here for thousands of years, and I haven't found any exit?" Ji Tianqing stretched out his hand and knocked on its big head again, hinting, even if there's an exit, it must be hidden. You have to think carefully. Where are the special areas or signs? Special areas? Or signs? The little blue Kuan tilted its head and looked at Ji Tianqing. After thinking for a moment, it suddenly thought of something. "I remember now. Not far from my house, there's a 5-colored hill. I'll take you there." Before it could finish speaking, it couldn't wait to lead Ji Tianqing to the 5-colored hill. After a quarter of an hour, when Ji Tianqing followed it and arrived at the 5-colored hill, he found that it was a hill piled up by coral reefs. Ji Tianqing released his divine sense and used the 10,000 divine eyes to observe the hill for a long time, but he didn't find any clues. "Little guy, this is just an ordinary coral reef. There's no formation mystery. Think again. Is there any other place that's also very special?" The little blue Kuan tilted its head. After thinking for a moment, it nodded and said, "Yes, there are dozens of hills like this in the surrounding 10,000 miles. Ji Tianqing was speechless. He couldn't help but knock on its head and remind it, "Hey, fathead fish, can you use your little head a little? Do colorful coral reefs gathered into a hill mean that it's very special? Other than these hills, is there any other place?" The little blue Kuan showed an aggrieved expression, as if it was very hurt and wanted to cry. After thinking seriously for a moment, it solemnly shook its head and said, "There's no other place." Ji Tianqing was completely helpless. He could only accept his fate and said with a wry smile, "All right, then we can only investigate those 5-colored hills first. I hope the heavens are watching over us. The exit of this layer of space is really in those 5-colored hills." The little blue Kuan learned to be smart. It didn't answer or explain. Chapter 1986. It turned out that little blue Kuan was such a simple fish, it would not lie. Ji Tianqing explored more than a dozen colorful hills and finally found a special hill. This hill was located in the trench and was surrounded by darkness. Only the hill was covered with coral reefs that were emitting colorful lights and emitting powerful energy waves. Ji Tianqing circled the hill a few times and used his divine sense to explore. There was another mystery inside the hill. Little blue Kuan saw that he was silent and was afraid that he would not believe it, so it explained, "I vaguely remember that the seniors of the sea beasts would often come here to hold sacrificial ceremonies. I was still young then and did not understand what they were doing. Now that I think about it, they seem to be worshipping and praying to a god. Ji Tianqing nodded and told it, "Wait here, I'll go in and take a look." Then, he passed through the layers of coral reefs and entered the colorful hill. He released his divine sense and used the 10,000 divine eyes to carefully explore the inside of the hill. An hour later, he discovered that there was a mysterious formation hidden in the 5-colored hill. The formation was very mysterious. It should be a god-level formation of the demon clan. He racked his brain for a long time before he remembered that this should be the demon clan's supreme god-sorcerer formation. Phew! Fortunately, it's only a true-level divine formation. There should be a chance to open it. Ji Tianqing heaved a sigh of relief as a pleased smile appeared on his face. The martial god powerhouses in this world were only virtual gods in the upper realm, or they were called false gods. If one could ascend to the upper realm and become stronger through baptism and cultivation, one could become a real god and be called a true god. A true god-level divine formation was the most common in the upper realm. Therefore, Ji Tianqing was confident that he could open the supreme god-sorcerer formation. The biggest problem and obstacle was that his strength was only at the tribulation stage. Without reaching the martial god stage, one could not release divine power. To open the divine formation, one had to use divine power. Normal magical power was useless. Burial of Heaven was also anxious and worried. Even if you know all kinds of divine arts and remember the way to break this divine formation, it's useless. You only have the strength of the tribulation realm. How can you break the divine array? Isn't that going against the heavens? Only if you have reached the martial god realm will you have enough confidence. Ji Tianqing thought for a moment, then revealed a meaningful smile. He shook his head and said, "That might not be the case. I still have a chance. Although I haven't recovered to the god realm, I can still use the power of stars and lightning. These two powers are of the same origin as god power. What's more, I still have the heaven-mending pearl, a divine artifact. I've nurtured it for so long and helped it recover so much of its strength. It's time for it to do something for me." Then he formed a seal with both hands and began to cast a spell to break the array. His left hand released the silver starfire, and his right hand released the 4-colored lightning, which he infused into the supreme god-wizard formation. The veins and nodes of the formation were immediately activated, emitting a brilliant 7-colored glow. This scene proved that Ji Tianqing's method was feasible. He was greatly encouraged. Burial of Heaven was also excited. He said expectantly, "I didn't expect this method to work. You're simply too heaven-defying. Breaking the divine formation as a tribulation realm cultivator is definitely an unprecedented miracle. Even you couldn't accomplish such a feat in your previous life." Ji Tianqing cast a spell to break the formation, and said to Burial of Heaven with his divine thoughts, "Since I've been reborn, of course I have to surpass my previous life, create another miracle, and climb to the peak. I can't just stay in the same place, right?" Buried Heaven made a sound of agreement, expressing his deep agreement. Unknowingly, a day had passed. Ji Tianqing used the power of stars and lightning to open the entire Supreme God-Wizard formation. He had already broken about 30% of it. Even though he had a lot of power, he was exhausted. He was so tired that his face was pale and he was sweating profusely. After all, what he wanted to break was a real divine formation, something that didn't belong to this world. Miracles weren't so easy to create. Outside the small mountain, little Blue Kuan was waiting anxiously again. It was a little nervous. It wanted to urge Ji Tianqing to ask about the progress of the matter. However, it remembered what happened before, so it could only be patient and continue to wait. 2 days passed. Ji Tianqing was still breaking the formation in the small mountain. He had already used up 60% of his power. His strength was greatly weakened, and he looked very tired. Thus, he began to use the power of the heaven-mending orb to help him break the divine formation. With the support of the heaven-mending orb's divine power, the speed of breaking the formation was obviously several times faster. The small mountain emitted 7-colored divine light, illuminating dozens of miles around. Late at night on the 3rd day, the 7-colored divine light emitted by the small mountain suddenly retracted. The divine light condensed into a 7-colored door of light that was 30 feet tall, and appeared in the small mountain. Without a doubt, Ji Tianqing had successfully broken the Supreme God-Wizard formation and opened the entrance to the 5th level. He hurriedly ended the spell and lay on the ground, exhausted, panting heavily. He had almost used up all of his power. He only had about 20% left. At this moment, his power had fallen to the extreme. It could be said that he was an arrow at the end of its flight. It was as if he had fought a great battle and was heavily injured. Fortunately, his body was special and had a powerful self-healing ability. The heaven-mending orb also released a mysterious white light that entered his body and helped him quickly recover his power. After a short 6 hours, Ji Tianqing's power had recovered to 60%, and his fatigue was greatly reduced. At this moment, little Blue Kuan couldn't hold back the doubts and nervousness in its heart. It opened its mouth and asked, "Hey, are you still inside? The small mountain isn't shining anymore. Did something happen? Are you dead? If you're dead, then I'm leaving." Ji Tianqing wanted to circulate his energy to regulate his breathing, but when he heard the last sentence, he was so angry that he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Swoosh! His figure flashed and flew out of the small mountain, appearing in front of little Blue Kuan. Thump! Thump! Ji Tianqing reached out his hand like lightning and knocked on its head twice. He scolded in annoyance, "You fathead fish, can't you be more tactful with your words? Where's the trust we agreed on? Where's the sincerity we agreed on? If I'm really dead, are you not even going to collect my corpse?" Little Blue Kuan was knocked and dodged repeatedly. Its big eyes blinked repeatedly, revealing a look of grievance. Why are you hitting me again? I'm just concerned about you. Is there anyone who cares about others like you?" Ji Tianqing rolled his eyes at it. Little Blue Kuan thought for a moment and quickly changed the topic. "You're safe and sound. Did you succeed?" "Yes." Ji Tianqing nodded. Little Blue Kuan immediately revealed a look of surprise and asked, "That's great. Then you can leave now." Ji Tianqing glanced at it from the corner of his eyes and revealed a malicious smile. He said in a strange tone, "Little guy, it's too lonely for you to stay here alone. It's not good for cultivation. I know the Kuan race very well. I can help you grow and become stronger quickly. Come with me to the 6th level of the Divine Pagoda. That's the holy land for cultivation." Chapter 1987. Little Blue Kuan had been in contact with Ji Tianqing for a few days and had already established a preliminary trust. Its guard against Ji Tianqing had also been greatly reduced. However, when it heard Ji Tianqing's words, its nerves immediately tensed up. Before Ji Tianqing could finish speaking, it widened its eyes and revealed a look of intense vigilance. You want to trick me and take me away from here?" As it spoke, it subconsciously retreated. "Hey, this fathead fish isn't stupid." Ji Tianqing thought so in his heart, but on the surface, he still had to show a gentle and sincere expression and patiently persuade it. "Little fellow, what do you mean by trick? Don't make it sound so unpleasant. I'm doing this for your own good. How lonely would it be for you to stay here alone? There's no one to chat with, and no one to teach you cultivation. This place is barren and too boring. I'll take you to see the wonderful world and help you become a god." Little Blue Kuan was stunned when it heard this, and the vigilance in its eyes did not decrease at all. After Ji Tianqing finished speaking, it shook its head repeatedly and said, "After all that talk, you still want to trick me into leaving? Humph, I won't believe you anymore, you bad guy." After saying that, it turned around and ran without hesitation, as fast as a bolt of blue lightning. Seeing that it did not listen to his advice at all, Ji Tianqing was rather helpless and could only use the heaven-capturing dragon claw. Swoosh! A huge golden dragon claw descended from the sky and grabbed Little Blue Kuan. Little Blue Kuan still wanted to teleport and escape, but the surrounding space was sealed, and it was immediately captured. The golden dragon claw held it tightly, and no matter how it struggled, it could not break free. It resisted desperately, constantly letting out sharp hissing sounds and cursing angrily. "Bad guy! You liar, let go of me! You want to harm me, kill me, and steal my territory. I shouldn't have believed you. Humans are all evil bastards." Ji Tianqing wanted to explain to it, but the 7-colored light gate in the small mountain had already begun to flicker and soon closed. Helplessly, he could only throw the Little Blue Kuan into the sword world and rush into the small mountain. Shwa! He turned into a streak of golden light and darted into the light gate at lightning speed. In the next instant, the door of light flickered with 7-colored divine light and disappeared into thin air. Tranquility returned to the colorful mountain as if nothing had happened. Ji Tianqing passed through an invisible spatial barrier, left the 4th floor of the divine pagoda, and entered the 5th floor. Light returned to his eyes, and his feet landed on the ground. Lowering his head, he saw that the ground beneath his feet was paved with top-grade white jade. It was flat and smooth, shining with a white light. The surroundings were illuminated by the brilliance of the white jade, making it seem very spacious. Ji Tianqing frowned and looked around. Gradually he could see clearly. This was a spacious hall with a radius of about 3,000 meters. The circular hall was hundreds of meters high, and the dome was filled with stars, shining brightly. This was a style unique to the god realm, where the ceiling would often be decorated with star charts. After all, deities drew on the divine power of the stars to cultivate. Ji Tianqing could see that the thousands of light spots on the dome were not embedded gems. Instead, they were real stars that had been compressed into the size of a fist by a divine art and embedded in the dome. What a grand display! It's comparable to my power back in the day. It seems that the master of this divine pagoda is at least a god king. Ji Tianqing understood and could not help but secretly exclaim in admiration. At this time, Burial of Heaven reminded him. There seems to be an altar in the middle of the hall. Ji Tianqing turned around and looked at the center of the hall. Sure enough, he saw a 100-meter-tall platform. He quickly flew over and observed it closely. The 100-meter-tall altar had a strong demonic style. It was built with 5 colored stones and embedded with tens of thousands of gold and silver gems, as well as other special materials. Ji Tianqing could tell at a glance that all of the materials were divine items, and they were top-notch treasures that could only be found in the higher realms. They definitely did not exist in Shenwu continent. What was even stranger was that the altar was not in the shape of a spire. Instead, it looked like a giant mushroom. The bottom was narrow, and the top was a platform with a radius of 300 meters. On the platform, there were 18 demonic god statues of different shapes arranged in a circle. There was a celestial wolf with a pair of silver wings, an enchanting fox god with a charming temperament, and a one-legged Xueqi cow that controlled divine lightning. The 18 demonic god statues were all different in appearance. Some were ferocious and tyrannical, while others were mysterious and enchanting. They all faced the center of the platform like 18 loyal guards that were protecting something. Ji Tianqing sized up the 18 demonic god statues before looking at the center of the platform. The center of the platform was empty. There was only a circular formation on the ground that was 30 meters wide. There were thousands of lines on the formation, and hundreds of ancient demonic characters that were divided into tens of thousands of different regions. Ji Tianqing could tell at a glance that this was not an ordinary formation, but rather a divine compass formation. A mere 30 meters wide compass contained an unparalleled mystery that had thousands of transformations and effects. Only a top-notch divine master in the Tao of formations could control a divine compass formation. Kenshin had been the king of gods in the past, and he had been extremely knowledgeable and well-versed in everything. Ji Tian walked to the vicinity of the divine compass formation and observed it attentively. He revealed a deep pondering expression. Relying on his incomplete memories, he tried his best to identify this divine compass formation. Time passed silently. He stood motionless in his original spot, deep in thought. His brain was working at full speed. The thousands of lines and hundreds of ancient characters on the compass constantly flickered in his mind, changing into various formations. Unknowingly, 5 days had passed. Ji Tianqing finally looked relieved, and a smile appeared on his face. So that's how it is. It's actually the legendary Origin Divine formation that can open the Origin Divine gate that leads to the 33 Paradise. Burial of Heaven had remained silent and did not disturb him. At this moment, Buried Heaven was a little shocked to hear that. The Origin Divine formation? Isn't that a regal divine art that only a demonic god king can master? Ji Tianqing nodded. That's right. I'm now certain that the master of this 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes tower is a demonic god king. Moreover, this god king resides in the 33 Paradise and is one of the strongest demonic powerhouses. This Origin Divine formation is the core of this divine tower. As long as I can decipher this formation, I'll be able to enter and exit the tower as I please. Burial of Heaven was silent for a moment, then said with some concern, since it's a regal divine formation, then we have no chance. Unless you recover your past strength and return to the God King realm. Ji Tianqing nodded and smiled bitterly. That's right. The origin divine formation of the demonic race is one of their top techniques. It's extremely profound and complex. Even I had to expend some effort to decipher it in the past. I'm too weak right now, so I can't do it. After a pause, he smiled playfully. However, I can't control this divine tower for now, so there's no need to decipher the origin divine formation. Chapter 1988. Ji Tianqing's words caused Burial of Heaven to fall into deep thought. It carefully analyzed the situation before replying solemnly. Although the logic is not bad, it's very difficult to implement. You only have the strength of a Tribulation Realm cultivator, yet you want to activate a king-grade formation. That's too absurd. Ji Tianqing smiled confidently and said playfully, I know all of this, but Burial of Heaven, you forgot a secret technique. The Divine Blood Imperial Spirit Technique. Burial of Heaven fell silent, and it took a long time before it recovered. It asked in shock, You can't be thinking of using the Divine Blood Imperial Spirit Technique to communicate with this origin god formation, right? Why not? This is a strange move. Ji Tianqing's eyes shone even brighter. Burial of Heaven became even more worried and hurriedly tried to dissuade him. Are you crazy? Why would you risk using such a secret technique? The Divine Blood Imperial Spirit Technique is usually used to refine ownerless artifacts, and it has the effect of recognizing a master with a drop of blood. If it succeeds, it will allow the host to communicate with the artifact smoothly and allow them to fuse as quickly as possible. However, this divine pagoda definitely has an owner. If you fail to recognize a master with your blood, you will suffer a backlash from the pagoda and its master. You also said that the master of this pagoda is the Devil King of the 33 Heavens. You definitely won't be able to withstand the backlash from the pagoda, and there's a 99% chance that you will lose your life. Ji Tianqing refused to give up and said confidently, Burial of Heaven, have you ever wondered why the pagoda of that Devil King appeared on Shenwu continent? According to historical records, the Yin-Yang realm existed 5,000 years ago. If that Devil King was still alive, would he have left the pagoda outside? Thus, I'm 80% sure that the Devil King has already fallen. Even if he didn't fall, he must have encountered a great calamity and can't even take care of himself. Burial of Heaven considered it for a moment before saying, That's possible, but you have to consider the consequences. If you fail and suffer a backlash, it's very likely that you will lose your life. Ji Tianqing consoled, Don't worry, I have the Heaven Mending Pearl to protect my soul, so I definitely won't lose my life. Apart from taking a risk, we have no other choice but to be trapped here and wait for death. Therefore this is the only way. Burial of Heaven also understood his situation and did not say anything more. Then, Ji Tianqing began to cast his spell. He sat cross-legged in the origin divine formation, his face solemn as he waved his hands and formed hand seals, sending out bolts of astral fire and lightning. Silver and purple divine power continuously poured into the compass beneath him. His casting speed was not fast. He cast the divine spells in an orderly manner. He was very serious and focused. After all, he was about to activate a king-grade divine array. Even after tens of millions of years, the power of the divine pagoda had been greatly weakened, and the power of the great array had also been weakened. However, it was still not something that ordinary gods could touch. Unknowingly, 3 days had passed. Ji Tianqing continued to cast spells. His spirit and magic power were very empty, and his breath was getting weaker and weaker. Burial of Heaven could no longer sit by and watch, hurriedly fusing with him to provide him with strength. He then used the divine power of the Heaven Mend Pearl, and the pressure on him instantly lessened. Soon, 10 days had passed. The origin divine formation, which had a radius of 100 feet, now had several hundred lines in ancient characters, all of them shining with silver and purple light. The crucial moment of casting the spell had finally arrived. Ji Tianqing was about to use his essence and divine blood to communicate with the origin divine formation beneath him. Success or failure will depend on this. He softly muttered as he slowly extended his right index finger and forced out a drop of blood from his heart. This was a drop of golden divine blood, radiating a dazzling golden light and imbued with immense power. Drip! The divine blood fell onto the compass, dripping onto the fist-sized diagram at its center. The golden divine blood instantly fused into the formation and vanished. The entire origin divine formation erupted with dazzling golden light, illuminating the surroundings. All the lines, characters, and diagrams of the formation lit up with golden light and quickly connected together. An invisible bloodline connection formed between Ji Tianqing and the Origin Divine Formation. This sort of connection was like that of a father and a brother. As the light of the Origin Divine Formation grew more and more dazzling, this connection of bloodline and energy grew more and more intense. Ji Tianqing was overjoyed and couldn't help but cheer in excitement. Haha, my guess was right. It really did work. There was no doubt that his spell had succeeded. As expected, the master of the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes Pagoda, the monster race god king of the 33 heavens, had perished. This divine pagoda had become an ownerless object. Now, Ji Tianqing had dripped his blood on it to claim it as his master. Since he was connected to the Origin Divine Formation by blood, he could control the formation with his mind and freely enter and exit the divine pagoda. As for controlling the entire divine pagoda, he was currently too weak, far from enough. But even so, it was enough to make him go mad with excitement. Around an hour later, the golden light dimmed and the Origin Divine Formation calmed down. Ji Tianqing was completely exhausted. He hurriedly sat in the middle of the array and consumed a few pills to quickly recover his magic power. A day and a night passed. Ji Tianqing had recovered 80% of his energy, and his mental state had also returned to normal. Full of anticipation and eagerness, he prepared to try activating the divine formation. Burial of Heaven reminded him, "You haven't grasped the Origin Divine Formation yet. You can only activate it. Before you activate the divine array, you have to think it through. If you're transported away by the Origin Divine Gate, where will you appear?" Ji Tianqing chuckled. "Of course I won't be transported to the monster race's 33 heavens." Burial of Heaven choked for a moment before patiently advising, "If you're transported outside the divine pagoda, you'll be in the Yin-Yang secret realm and unable to leave. If you're transported to the 6th floor, there might be unknown dangers and the formation there is also a king-level divine formation. If you're transported out of the secret realm, how will you enter the secret realm and return to the divine pagoda?" Ji Tianqing replied without hesitation, "If I'm transported out of the secret realm, I'll just come back and think of another way. If I'm transported out of the secret realm, I'll just go back home. I'll refine this divine pagoda after I break through to the martial god realm. I don't believe that anyone understands this divine pagoda better than I do. Could it be that there's someone who can snatch the divine pagoda before me?" Burial of Heaven saw that he had already thought this through, so he didn't try to persuade him otherwise. Ji Tianqing didn't want to stay in this deathly stillness any longer, so he hurriedly activated the Origin Divine Formation. Whoosh! The Origin Divine Formation lit up with dazzling golden light and began to spin. The lines and diagrams on the ground immediately transformed into thousands of profound seals. A moment later, the formation released a dense white light that condensed into an Origin Divine Gate more than 3 meters tall. Ji Tianqing's heart was filled with anticipation as he stepped into the gate. Whoosh! In a flash of white light, he vanished. Chapter 1989. Swoosh! A flash of white light cut through the darkness. When the white light faded, a handsome young man in a white robe appeared in the darkness. Without a doubt, he was Ji Tianqing. Something doesn't seem right? When Ji Tianqing landed on the ground, he realized that something was amiss when he saw the pitch-black surroundings. Beneath his feet were icy black stone slabs, and around him was a plaza shrouded in darkness. Not far in front of him was an enormous altar. It was 60 meters tall and spanned a radius of 3,000 meters. It was a majestic sight to behold. At the top of the altar stood a towering statue of the 6-armed Vajra war god. Around the altar were over 1,000 monster statues of various shapes and sizes. They were all in prostration and worship at the Vajra war god on the altar. Such a familiar scene made Ji Tianqing realize it immediately. He'd been transported to the 2nd level of the divine pagoda. Ji Tianqing couldn't help but roll his eyes with a wry smile. He'd considered several possibilities after entering the exalted divine sect. Perhaps he'd been transported to a secret realm, or out of it. Or perhaps he'd been transported to a completely foreign place. But he'd never imagined that the exalted divine sect would send him back to the 2nd level. Wasn't this a trap? However, Ji Tianqing didn't have time to feel depressed. He could clearly see that in the darkness ahead, there were dozens of scarlet and dark purple eyes staring at him in unison. 25 pairs of eyes brimming with killing intent were scattered around the altar. They were 25 strange-looking black-robed men who didn't look human. Black smoke swirled around them and they exuded a dangerous aura. Ji Tianqing was very sensitive to their auras and immediately recognized them. The 25 black-robed men were all experts of the Devil Clan, and they all had the strength of the Crossing Calamity Realm. Damn it! They're demons from Dark North Mountain. Ji Xiolua's speed is so fast that he's already reached the second level? Ji Tianqing immediately realized that these demonic experts were Demon Saint Ji Xiolua's subordinates. When he thought of Ji Xiolua, he subconsciously raised his head and looked at the top of the altar. Sure enough, there was a pitch-black beast standing at the top of the altar. The giant beast was covered in black scales and had sharp claws and wings. It also had a hooked tail, just like the legendary Azura. When Ji Tianqing looked at it, it was also looking down at Ji Tianqing. Its scarlet eyes flashed with a cruel and bloodthirsty sneer. Human race? Ji Xiolua's sharp and narrow mouth moved slightly as he spoke in a low and cold voice. It looked at Ji Tianqing with a mocking gaze and asked in broken continent common language. Kid, tell the saint your identity and origin, and how did you enter this divine pagoda? Tell me the truth and I'll give you a quick death. Ji Tianqing looked at it with contempt and sneered. Back then, Patriarch Xueqi was just as arrogant as you. Later, I crippled him. I guess he's living a life worse than death now. If you're tired of living, I'll fulfill your wish. Suddenly hearing these words, Jixielo's pupils constricted, and a fierce cold light flashed through them. Its body trembled and it quickly reacted. You fought with Patriarch Xueqi? You destroyed his Dharma body? You're from the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Huanglong Taoist? No. Ji Tianqing. Yes. You're Ji Tianqing. Since the day the ancestor demon god returned to the North Underworld Mountain, Ji Tianqing had been the greatest enemy of the demonic race. As the demon saint of the North Underworld Mountain, even if it had not seen Ji Tianqing with its own eyes, it knew Ji Tianqing's appearance. Ji Xiolua stared at Ji Tianqing and compared him with the portrait he had seen before. It immediately confirmed Ji Tianqing's identity. At first, it was startled, then it was filled with excitement, revealing a look of intense excitement. Kakik. I didn't expect that a damned human worm like you would also enter the divine pagoda. I originally planned to go to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains to kill you after exploring the arcane realm. I didn't expect to meet you here. That's great, the two matters can be settled at once. Ji Xiolua grinned coldly, and a cold murderous aura surged from his body. He flapped a pair of wide black azure wings and released endless demonic fog, covering a radius of 10 miles to prevent Ji Tianqing from escaping. Then, he waved his sharp claws and gave orders to the demonic powerhouses around the altar. Let's go together and capture him alive. I want to capture him alive and bring him back to the North Underworld Mountain to receive my reward. The 25 demonic powerhouses immediately accepted the order and took out their magic treasures and weapons. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Everyone attacked Ji Tianqing from all directions, using their secret techniques and secret techniques. Purple, red and black magic shadows, as well as all kinds of secret magic of the Devil Clan, poured down from the sky. The area within a radius of 10 miles was illuminated. The ground was dazzling purple, as if it was stained with blood. Ji Tianqing was in the center of the storm. He was surrounded by 25 powerhouses in the tribulation stage, but he was not afraid. Haha, it just so happens that I haven't had a chance to test my skills before. Since I met you, it's your destiny to die. I'll use you to test my skills. He sneered. A black light flashed in his right hand, and the sword of burial of heaven appeared out of thin air. Swing the sword. The sword of burial of heaven swung and slashed out a 1,000-foot-long silver light. Like a crescent moon, it swept across the demonic powerhouses. Bang bang bang. The sky was full of magic shadows, all kinds of demonic light, blood light, and black fog. They were all defeated by the silver sword light and collapsed on the spot. More than 10 demonic powerhouses were swept by the sword light and flew back screaming. Only a few scattered saber lights and sword shadows landed on Ji Tianqing's body, producing a series of muffled sounds. However, Ji Tianqing was safe and sound. His physical body was too strong, and his defense was comparable to that of a martial sage. Ordinary people could not hurt him. The joint attack formation of the demonic powerhouses was broken by Ji Tianqing in one move. Among them, A dozen or so demons were either lightly or heavily injured. At the top of the altar, Ji Xiolua was watching the battle with a cold smile on his face. When he suddenly saw this scene, the cold smile on his face instantly froze. His eyes widened, revealing an extremely shocked expression. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not have dared to believe that Ji Tianqing's strength was actually so strong. He was comparable to a martial sage powerhouse and was evenly matched with him. This is impossible. Back then, Patriarch Xueqi said that he was injured by Huanglong Daoist. Could it be that this old man deliberately hid the truth in order not to lose face? This thought flashed through his mind, and Ji Xiolua suddenly understood something. Just as he was in a daze, Ji Tianqing had already used his unique skill and started to kill. Heavenly Dragon Palm. 7-star sword. He struck out a golden dragon with his left palm and blasted toward the demonic powerhouses on the left. He waved the sword of burial of heaven in his right hand and stabbed out 49-star divine fire, killing more than 10 demons on the right. Those demonic powerhouses were all the elites of the North Underworld Mountain. They only had the strength of the second or third layer of the tribulation stage. How could they resist Ji Tianqing's divine power? Chapter 1990. In the blink of an eye, more than 20 Demon Clan experts were sent flying by Ji Tianqing. All of them were severely injured. They were either covered in blood or bleeding from their 7 orifices. It was proven that although Ji Tianqing was only at stage 8 of the Crossing Calamity Realm, his combat strength was comparable to a martial sage. Moreover, the secret skills that he had mastered were difficult for ordinary martial sages to deal with. Ji Xiolua finally came to his senses. He was shocked and angry. He no longer dared to underestimate Su Mo. He roared and flapped his black wings. He turned into a black ray of light and rushed toward Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing. You damn thief. I'm going to tear you to shreds. As it roared, it waved its pair of sharp claws and shot out sharp blades of black light that covered the sky towards Ji Tianqing like a hurricane. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The black light blades cut the night sky within 1,000 feet. Dozens of space cracks appeared. The power of the Azura Demon Sage's attack was extraordinary. Ji Tianqing was in the mood to kill. When he saw Ji Xiolua rushing toward him, he did not dodge. Instead, he took the initiative to meet him. Haha! You have just become a martial sage. How dare you call yourself a martial sage? Do you have any shame? Golden Rock Dance, Sky-Splitting Sword. Ji Tianqing shouted angrily. A pair of golden wings appeared on his back. It was his battle robe that had transformed into a pair of wings. He had not used this secret skill for a long time. Now that the skill had changed, its power was even greater than before. The golden wings flapped and hundreds of golden light blades slashed at the black light blades in the sky. There were muffled sounds. He held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands. His essence, qi, and spirit merged and slashed out a giant silver sword that was 1,000 feet long. The giant sword was formed by the power of stars. It was surrounded by silver divine fire and was extremely powerful. Swoosh! In 1/5 of an instant, the giant sword cut through the sky and hit Ji Xiolua. Boom! With a loud bang, Ji Xiolua was sent flying back by the giant sword and landed heavily on the wasteland outside the square. The ground was smashed into a deep pit, and the surrounding area was split open, causing sand and stones to fly into the air. Ji Tianqing had thought that his sword would cut Ji Xiolua in half. Even if he didn't die, he would be severely injured. However, he had underestimated Ji Xiolua's strength, especially his defense. When the giant sword struck Ji Xiolua, it folded its black wings to protect itself. The enormous sword condensed from the star divine flames cut open a wound on its wings, revealing dark purple demonic bones. A large amount of demonic blood flowed out. However, its wings were not severed, and its injuries were not serious. After falling to the ground, it rolled a few times and got up. It charged at Ji Tianqing even more furiously, but its combat power was not weakened by much. Little bastard, I'll show you my Azura ultimate skill. Azura Phantom. Ji Xiolua was completely enraged. He no longer held back and used his trump card. He no longer released any spells. Instead, he pressed his body in front of Ji Tianqing and engaged in close combat. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In the blink of an eye, his figure flashed 18 times around Ji Tianqing, leaving behind 18 phantoms. Each phantom had a different attacking posture. They stretched out their sharp claws, either stabbing or clawing at Ji Tianqing's vital points. Bang! 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 A series of muffled sounds echoed in the night sky. Although Ji Tianqing tried his best to dodge, he was still hit 9 times. His body trembled as he was sent flying 5 kilometers away. When he landed on the ground, his white robe was in tatters, and there were 9 bloody marks on his pale golden skin. Fortunately, his physical body had been tempered hundreds of times and was comparable to a martial sage. Otherwise, he would have been torn to pieces by Ji Xueqi. The Azura demon clan is indeed extraordinary. Ji Tianqing put away his disdainful expression and muttered in a gloomy tone. He knew very well that the Azura Dao of the demon clan was best at close combat. The demon race powerhouses that cultivated the Azura Dao had an inconceivable level of physical defense, strength, reaction speed, and explosive power. In all the worlds, only the Dragon Clan could stand shoulder to shoulder with the Azura Dao of the Demon Clan. Legend had it that there were Demon Clan elites who did not cultivate the dermic powers of heaven and earth. They only relied on their physical bodies to become saints. According to Ji Tianqing's knowledge, only the Dragon Clan and the Azura Demon Clan could do that. Ji Xueqi's attack succeeded. He grinned coldly and said, "Haha, I said just now that I'll tear you to pieces. You won't be able to escape." With that, he turned into a ray of black light again and charged at Ji Tianqing. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Another 18 Azura phantoms appeared and surrounded Ji Tianqing. They attacked Ji Tianqing's vital points from all angles in the most violent manner. Ji Tianqing no longer defended passively. He used his secret technique without hesitation. Celestial Dragon Body. Roar. With a dragon's roar, Ji Tianqing's body emitted a golden light that shot into the sky. He instantly turned into a 30-foot-tall giant. Dazzling golden light swirled around his body like a layer of golden armor. He was like a god of war in golden armor. He exuded a domineering aura that looked down on the world. Whether it was defense, strength or speed, they all increased by several times. Without hesitation, he swung his fists and raised his feet. He punched out 12 times in an instant and kicked out 16 times. Bam, 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 bam. The golden light from his fists and feet collided with the Azura phantoms. There was a deafening explosion. Suddenly, the Azura phantoms collapsed and turned into a destructive shockwave that spread in all directions. The shockwave mixed with the golden light and the black light swept across the entire square. Nearly 1,000 demon statues in the square were immediately destroyed by the shockwave. They turned into dust that covered the sky and scattered in the night sky. Only the altar and the 6-armed Vajra war god statue on top of the altar were still intact. However, Ji Tianqing and Ji Xueqi were engaged in a fierce battle. They did not notice this. Neither of them used any spells. They relied solely on their physical strength and martial arts to launch the fiercest and most violent battle. Every punch and kick, every move would collide fiercely. They did not give in at all. This was the most bloody battle, but also the most dangerous one. The slightest mistake would result in serious injuries or even the destruction of one's physical body. Bam! Bam! Loud noises rang out continuously. Violent shockwaves kept exploding in the night sky. In just a short span of 100 breaths, the two of them had exchanged more than 1,000 moves. They had suffered serious injuries all over their bodies. Ji Tianqing's chest, back, limbs, and head were all left with streaks of blood that kept oozing out. The clothes and hair on his body had been destroyed long ago. Ji Xueqi was in an even more miserable state. More than a dozen of the bones in his wings were broken and his barbed tail was broken. The bones in his chest were all shattered and deeply caved in. Purple demonic blood flowed out of its mouth and nose. The more Ji Xueqi fought, the more frightened he became. His expression also became uglier. Close combat was his forte. It was also the ultimate skill he was proud of and the source of his confidence. However, a human who was several times weaker than the Devil Clan was actually fighting it in close combat with the Devil Clan. More importantly, this human's strength, defense, and martial arts were superior to his. He was beaten to a pulp. Chapter 1991. Damn bastard! How can his defense and strength be so strong? Could he have broken through to the martial sage realm and cultivated the dragon tribe's secret killing technique? Xueqi retreated to the east side of the altar. While he was panting, he pondered in shock. He could tell that Ji Tianqing was using the dragon tribe's combat technique. Every move was accompanied by the sound of a dragon's roar. Golden light flashed and the shadow of a divine dragon appeared. Xueqi thought to himself, could this kid be from the dragon tribe? Only the dragon tribe would have such a strong physical body and such a marvelous combat technique. But the demon god never mentioned that this kid is from the dragon tribe. Could he have hidden it too well? Thinking of this, Xueqi decided that after returning to the North Underworld Mountain, he would definitely report this top-secret information to the ancestral devil god. At that moment, Ji Tianqing flew out from the darkness and looked down at Xueqi from above. He let out a scornful laugh. Hee, what bullshit Azura demon god is he? He is just a dog and a chicken that can't withstand a single blow. Xueqi, if you have any other trump cards, use them now. Otherwise, you won't have a chance. Ji Tianqing's body shone with a golden light and the shadow of a dragon appeared behind him. Roar! The 100-jong-tall golden dragon phantom let out a dragon roar that could pierce through gold and shatter stone. Ji Tianqing also used all his strength and slashed at Xueqi with the Burial of Heaven sword. Heavenly Dragon Slash. At that moment, Sumo's strength exploded and gathered on the Burial of Heaven sword. The Burial of Heaven sword shone with a sacred golden light and formed a giant sword that was 100 feet long. With the power to destroy everything, it slashed at Xueqi's head. The golden light cut through the darkness and tore the night sky apart. Before the giant sword arrived, the unparalleled suppressive force suppressed Xueqi until his body trembled and his feet sank into the ground. Xueqi looked up at the giant sword. His pupils constricted and his expression was extremely solemn. It knew very well that if it was hit by this sword, even if it didn't die, it would be heavily injured. At the critical moment, he had no choice but to use a forbidden secret technique at all costs. Burning Blood Divinity, Azura Fist of the Great Demonic God. As it let out a furious roar, its entire body ignited with soaring blood flames. It ignited its own blood essence, causing its power to increase by more than 3 times. The price of using this secret technique was the loss of 50 years of cultivation. Die! Xueqi let out a furious roar and brandished a pair of cold pitch-black fists, recklessly smashing towards Ji Tianqing. A long blood-red tail of flame trailed behind it. Like a meteor streaking across the night sky, it collided with the giant sword. Boom! A deafening explosion rang out, echoing for hundreds of miles. The giant golden sword instantly crumbled, turning into millions of golden fragments that scattered in all directions. Ji Tianqing was pushed back by the horrifying power. He was sent tumbling backward and fell into the wasteland 20 miles away. Xueqi's wrists were cut off on the spot by the giant sword. His 2 sharp claws exploded into countless black pieces that scattered in the night sky. Several cracks appeared on the black shell on his chest. Purple demonic blood spurted out. He was heavily injured and in great pain. His combat power was also weakened. The extremely violent impact blasted out a deep crater with a radius of dozens of miles on the ground. Xueqi was covered in blood. He was sent flying dozens of miles away by the shockwave. Sand, dust, and gravel covered the entire wasteland. The violent impact surged into the darkness at the edge of the wilderness and immediately dissipated. After a full 100 breaths, the earth-shaking commotion gradually stopped. At the same time, the heavily injured Xueqi took the opportunity to burrow into the altar in the middle of the wilderness. Whoosh! In a flash, he escaped from the 2nd floor of the divine pagoda and disappeared without a trace. A moment later, Ji Tianqing turned into a streak of golden light. He flew out of the darkness and landed on the altar. During this period of time, he went to take care of a dozen or so surviving demons. Of the 20 or so demon experts, a dozen or so had been killed by the shockwaves of the battle. They had long been reduced to ashes. The remaining dozen or so had fled with serious injuries, but they did not escape Ji Tianqing's slaughter. At this point, the 20 or so demon experts were all dead. Only Xueqi was left. He had fled without a trace. Ji Tianqing had also returned to his original appearance. He was 7 feet tall, wore a white robe, and held the sword of Burial of Heaven. His aura was valiant and domineering. It was a pity that the long hair that had been destroyed had yet to grow back, making him look a little battered. He was only slightly injured. After circulating his energy and adjusting his breathing for a moment, he was already fine. Standing on the altar, he bent down to look at the drop of demon blood on the ground. He could not help but frown and mutter, "That damn Xueqi, he actually escaped? No. I can't give him a chance to breathe. I have to kill him completely while he's heavily injured." Ji Tianxing was determined to kill him. He had decided to eliminate the source of trouble. However, he was a little hesitant. He could not determine where Ji Xueqi had escaped to. Did he go to the third floor of the Divine Pagoda? Or did he return to the first floor of the Divine Pagoda? When I first came here, Ji Xueqi and those demons were around the altar. They seemed to be breaking the formation. I wonder if Ji Xueqi has broken the formation? Although Ji Tianxing thought so, he was sure that Ji Xueqi had most likely failed to break the formation. Even if he had escaped, he must have fled back to the first floor of the Divine Pagoda. Thus, Ji Tianxing waved his palm and released a golden light. He cast a spell to activate the formation. Swoosh! With a flash of light, Ji Tianxing passed through the formation and left the second floor of the Divine Pagoda. The next moment, he appeared on the first floor of the Divine Pagoda, standing in the square. Behind him were the statues of the two sages of Yin and Yang. Darkness surrounded him. Ji Tianxing released his divine sense and spread it around, searching for Ji Xueqi's traces. However, there were no traces of blood on the ground. There was also no trace of demonic qi in the air. Ji Tianxing was unwilling to give up. He quickly left the square and began a careful search of the surrounding buildings. He spent 4 hours carefully inspecting the thousands of houses and palaces twice. In the end, he still could not find any trace of Ji Xueqi. The facts proved that Ji Xueqi had not returned to the first floor of the Divine Pagoda. Ji Tianxing immediately frowned. His expression darkened as he pondered. Since he's not on the first floor, it's very likely that he escaped to the third floor. That damned Ji Xueqi. I didn't expect him to have broken the formation. Of course, there's another possibility. Ji Xueqi escaped from the Divine Pagoda and is hiding in the mystic realm. After making up his mind, Ji Tianxing cast a spell to activate the formation and left the first floor of the Divine Pagoda. Swoosh! With a flash of light, he returned to the second floor. His surroundings had not changed. Both the altar and the wasteland were the same as before. Swoosh! With another flash of light, Ji Tianxing passed through the formation and left the second floor of the Divine Pagoda. The next moment, he appeared on the third floor of the Divine Pagoda. He was also surrounded by a wasteland shrouded in endless darkness. Not far ahead was the mysterious Golden Crow's tomb. Ji Tianxing released his divine sense and spread it around, searching for Ji Xueqi's traces and flying towards the Golden Crow's tomb. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.